Greetings, humans. My name is Faculty Ott 2000. Due to budget cuts at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, I have been selected as a cost-effective replacement for your regular host, UAF Journalism Department Chair Robert Prince. I'm programmed to be twice as funny at one half the cost. I also spend much less time pretending to work when I'm really watching YouTube. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to Dark Winter Nights. Truth Stories.
No. No, I have in fact not been replaced by a robot at UAF, as awesome as that would be. I am here. I'm sorry I'm a little late. I was arrested by UAF police for smoking on campus. But fortunately, I was able to find a strategic pathway and escape. So, very happy to be here. So yes, let's get it started off the right way. Broadcasting live from Herring Auditorium in Fairbanks, Alaska, this is Dark Winter Nights, True Stories from Alaska. My name is Rob Prince. I'm chair of the journalism department at UAF and your host for an incredible night of True Stories from Alaska. Tonight we have 8 storytellers for you. Josh Weiser, Zoey Grenier, Eric Stevens, Mike Hopper, Kaiti Ott, Brittany Karns, and BJ Bennedsen. In fact, one of you will be telling a story for us tonight. Here's how it works. Hopefully you got a program. On the back of the program there's a little form where you can write in your name and turn that in, and you might be selected as our audience storyteller. We will pick that at intermission, so turn that into an usher either between storytellers or at intermission. You can also use that form if you want to help out with Dark Winter Nights, if you want to get on our mailing list, if you have a story you want to share but don't want to share it in front of all these people, don't turn that form in until after the show. Otherwise, we might get confused. Can you believe there are people who are nervous to get up in front of all of you? I don't understand what the big deal is. I mean, even my hands used to have a problem with it. But they're doing pretty good right now. I think about 95% of me is just so happy to be up here in front of all of you. Here are the audience storyteller rules. You have to put your own name down. Has to have happened in Alaska. Has to have happened to you. Has to be a story and not a speech. And it has to be 10 minutes or less. So fill out that form on the back of the program and you could be one of our storytellers tonight. We're also going to be reading your favorite April Fool's memories, and I'm not sure how many we have, but if you've got an April Fool's memory, write that down on the back of the program in the top portion, tear that off, and turn that into one of the ushers during, anytime between storytellers or during intermission, I'll be reading those for you on stage. Also, for those of you who are listening at home, you can submit your own April Fool's memories at facebook.com/darkwinternights. Or tweet at #DWN. So we'd love to hear from those of you who are not here tonight. Our band tonight is Thought Trade with Emily Anderson. They're back there. This is a little differently than how we normally run the show. I forgot that they weren't going to be out. So if you can imagine them, for our radio audience at home, they are automated. They are robots as well. I'd like to thank my employer, the University of Alaska Fairbanks College of Liberal Arts Journalism Department, and Geek City Electronics for helping to make tonight's event possible. Thank you, yes. Our storytellers all have time limits. If they go over their time limit, I will drive a remote control tank out into the stage and drive it over their toes. That's the first warning. If they continue to keep talking, then I will begin to fire upon them. But don't worry, I'm not going to do this for the serious stories, because that would be really inappropriate. In fact, the whole thing might be inappropriate. We're not really sure. Full disclosure, it was my idea. But at least the majority of the Dark Winter Nights team approved it. So we'll see how that goes. What I like about it is I'm non-confrontational, so this allows me to displace the confrontation onto that piece of plastic. And I think if any of you are like my wife, married to someone who's non-confrontational, you might think about the tank. It just makes it a little easier to figure out if they're mad at you. You know, you're doing the dishes, and all of a sudden you start getting hit by BBs. It might be a clue it's time to talk. So that's our tool for tonight. All right. I'd like to dedicate tonight's show to my cousin Krista Gustafson in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who may not be with us much longer, so thank you for that. Our first storyteller tonight has racked up many miles driving buses in Denali National Park, and with all the tourists he sees, it can be hard to remember any one of them in particular, but one time there was this one boy. So please welcome Josh Weiser with a story we call Come Ride With Me.
Can you hear me now? Come Ride With Me? I didn't give that title. It's all right. Well, let me take a look here. You know, this is the same scene that I had 2 days ago because I was invited at Kramer's Field, the ducks, the geese, the swans, you know, they are doing something annually that's special you don't know about. They come and they share stories of their trips, their migrations, you know, and they share the pitfalls and the ways they shouldn't go and how to stay safe. And so I spoke with them. It was just great. And they were seated just like you. Just as, wow. And of course, I speak fluently many duck dialects. Well, so now I've discredited myself completely. Duenda, how is your inner spirit today? Sagujra, Joshua, my name is Joshua. I got those names from my wife's village, who's Vera, from the village of Minto, and for 30 plus years I've had experiences traveling the land and learning to understand the land from indigenous eyes. And it's through my many trips out there that I've come to truly understand, or not truly, I'm working at it, but the relationship of this combined with this incredible wilderness that surrounds you. When you put together, an incredible moment of healing can take place. Incredible healing when these two come together. So, in 2009, as he was saying, you know, between 2000 and 2009, I was a tour guide. My job was to drive 53 people on the Denali Road for about 8 hours. Now that's 53 people a day times 5, usually 5 tours a week. So that's about 265 passengers. Multiply that by 4, we got 1,065 passengers. A 3-month season, that's 3,100, and 9 seasons, that's 28,600 people that I've had the opportunity to influence in a positive or negative way, but I've done my best. And so, but you know, after every tour, I would consider, you know, what human story took place on that trip that is going to last forever, and alas, it's hard to find it. After a while, all the faces blur. People begin to speak the same, they dress the same, they walk the same, they ask the same questions. And my God, how do I refresh myself? I got to inspire people every day. And so I would say a prayer that inspiration would come. And on June 7th, 2004, an incredible encounter took place on Tundra Wildlife Tour 24, one that I will never forget. Well, here we are. Now, all 53 people, you are all on my bus. That's incredible. I don't know how you smashed in there. People sitting on laps, whatever. And so I'm going to introduce myself, as I always would do before every tour. Duenda, how is your inner spirit today? Sagujra, Joshua, my Indian name is Diget, which means get out of here. Very flattering, but I've got so many names, I don't have time to explain each one. All right, so you're on my bus, and please repeat after me. Duenda. Duenda. Boy, you do a lot better than, you know, on the bus. Duendi, duendu, duenda. You are right on, that's great. Sagujra, and your name. Sagujra. Sa-gu-guj-ra. Sa-guj-ra. Okay, and that goes along with a special handshake. And there's no one to shake hands. I can shake hands with you. Come on up here. That's excellent. Okay. And you shake my hand. All right, he's squeezed. All right, this is a Western handshake. Okay, which connotes kind of a sense of power and overpower, But we are equal, so I want a dead handshake. Relax. That's very good, heart pressure going down. That's good. Good. I get good energy from him. He gets good energy from me. We're not trying to overpower each other. Thank you very much, Rob. We're going to go back and pursue this. No. Okay, all right. So, if you can, I'd like you to look at your neighbor and say, Dowinda, and then Dowinda, one more time, Dowinda, Sagujra, and your name. You can stand up, shake hands to the left, the right, behind, in front, getting telephone numbers, emails, social security numbers, whatever. Stand up, do it. Very good. Look at that. Well done. Well done. I am proud of you. Excellent. Very good. I hope you remember those words and some other things that I'll be sharing with you. Sagujra. Yeah, good. All right, so I just picked you up at the Princess Hotel, and now ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be entering the Park Road. And this 6 million acre park, it's an incredible park that you're going to see. And I remember the words of Charles Sheldon, who was considered a naturalist and the father of the park, who says, when the weight of the world tries to rub you into the ground, go to the wilderness for healing. Let the power of nature soothe your spirit and give you peace. All right, so now we're moving along. And then I say, pretty much, this is what exactly happens on my tour. First of all, I want to remind you that this 6 million acre park is not the San Diego Zoo. It is not Disneyland. I cannot guarantee that you're going to see all the animals or any of the animals you want. You all want to see a doll sheep, a moose, a grizzly bear, caribou, maybe a wolf. You want to see the mountain. I can't guarantee that. But there are some things that could help us out. And let me explain the indigenous concept of luck. Luck is something that you just don't happen when you go to Vegas. It just happens. It's something that you've earned. And you earn that luck every day. Shadows of the Kayakuk, Sidney Huntington talks about it quite a bit. You earn it. You go along the road, you see someone working on their car, flat tire, logs fell out of the back of the truck, you want to help them load it up, any kind of thing. You do not hesitate to freely and happily get out there and help. And that earns you luck, and that earns you the right to sing a song here that I'm going to teach you. It's a luck song. One disclaimer, my wife and I have been married 31 years. I've been immersed in Native cultures for a lot of those years. It is my interpretation. Anything comes out of my mouth, okay? I'm not indigenous, but I do the very best I can. So, all right, here's the song. One, nete he, ho, ho, he, ho, ho, he, ha, hey. Okay, your turn. And that always happens. What? Yeah, I thought I'm a passive tourist here. Do I have to participate? You sure do. And if it's not done right, there's a rest stop, I'm kicking your butt out. All right, so first part, here we go. One, nete he, ho, ho, hey, he. All right, I was singing the whole thing. Let's try it. One, nete hey, he, ho, ho, hey, he, ho, ho, hey, he. But we're not going to get, man. I don't know if, unless we have participation, if we're going to see a mosquito today. So we have to really work hard. All right. But in the constraints, given the time limits here, I think you did well. Oh, hey, let's have a great day. Good, all right. So now we're cruising along on the road, and somehow these people have earned good things because there is a bull moose, 1,600, 1,800 pounder, incredible wreck. Wow. We stop, and it's on the left side. The whole bus leans over. People are fighting. They're trying to get their pictures. The whole bus is leaning. I'm in terror. Calm down, calm down. It's a riot to get that picture. Incredible shot. Well, we continue on. Everything's okay. And then I say, this is a good time for me to teach you a moose call, okay? Because moose calls, I'll explain to you why it's so valuable. That is not a true call, but for the purposes of the bus tour, I use that. All right, guess what? You got it, man. You want to come up and do a solo with me? Huh? No? Okay, here we go. Ready? Oh, God. This is embarrassing. What kind of group is this? All right, now I want you to sit in your chairs and do a little bounce because that's really good for the diaphragm and pumps out air. Ready? Ready? I want to see real bumps. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Excellent. That's very good. Okay, so, yeah, whatever you ate for dinner is coming out by now. This is very useful because when we're on this tour, sometimes there are stops, and there are 6 or 7 other buses there too. Remember, 53 in a bus? So I'm going to be calling you. I'm not going to say, Tour 24, ready to go. No, I'm going to make this sound, and you have to respond back to me so I know you're part of my family, or I won't let you in the bus. And this happens all the time, and people think, what is going on? This crazy person? Oh, he's part of Josh's tour. He does it all the time, says some of the guides, So use this when you go to Walmart or Fred Meyer's to get your family together. It really works, Trying to get them going. If that doesn't work, go to customer service and make an announcement. Just say, and they know exactly what it means. All right, now now we're continuing on. And I tell you, it is a beautiful day this day. I mean, you couldn't have it better. You have clouds. A little bit of clouds, great contrast for photographs. And we are seeing what's called a grand slam. We are seeing all the key animals: moose, caribou, Dall sheep, grizzly bear, wolves, the mountain. I know it's going to come out when we get to it. It's absolutely incredible. And so we're driving along, and my God, there it is. There's the bear. It's a sow with 2 cubs right off the side of the road. Holy cow, this is incredible. I ooze up slightly. I say, please be quiet. Please be quiet. Please, we're easing up slowly. Now, all this time, I've been looking in the rearview mirror and watching at my audience. I always look at my audience, I'm looking at you. I'm trying to see if anything is getting through. And I'm noticing 2/3 of the audience seem to be paying special attention to a boy in the middle of the bus who is a blank stare. No emotion, no feeling, just staring. But they're telling him, do the ooh, ooh, that's good. Did you see that moose? Isn't that incredible? And wow, we got a bear here. Look at the bear, look at the bear. Trying to encourage him to respond, but he's just comatose. 2/3 of the bus seem to be directing great, caring, loving energy toward this boy. The other third of the bus toward me, they're all dressed in yellow. And these are RV tourists, these RV groups that go along in the caravan type. They're all dressed the same. They have the same hats. They have weird cheers. And I call them rubber duckies. Here we are. We're parked here. We're looking at that incredible sighting that we rarely see, maybe 10, 20 yards from the bus, right in front of this little boy. And this guy in the back seat, this rubber ducky says, what kind of engine you got in here? You got a Cummins engine or what's an Allison transmission? Well, how do you get good miles and get good torque and get good power on this thing? What are you talking about? We're looking at this. Keep it down, keep it down. I got one in my rig, $100,000 RV, and Allison works really. What are you talking about? Would you please keep it down? Why are you here? Why are you in this? Well, I took a picture of that bear already, and all I need to do is look for an Eskimo. Lord, how do I get this guy off my bus? This is terrible. All right. Now we continue on. Finally, we move on. The next stop is Polychrome Pass, a beautiful pass in a glacier valley overlooking. There's a river, there are glaciers. It's an incredible scene. People get off the bus, and those people that care about this little boy, they take him off to a beautiful wildflower tour. And then the mother stops and comes up to me and says, you know, Josh, I won't call you Daguet. Oh, thank you. You've been doing a great job. You've been humorous. You've been engaging us. And I know you've been looking at the mirror and looking at my son. And that is my son. I have to tell you, this boy has not said a word in 1 year, 1 entire year. Because 1 year ago, he witnessed his father commit suicide. He shot himself right in front of him, and he hasn't talked since. We've been to psychologists, therapists. We've done everything. And this 2/3 of us, we're a church group, we're prayer people, and we came together to see this beautiful land, but really to support this little boy whose name is George. He's 10 years old. And we're encouraging him, we're giving him love, and we're praying for him that he comes out. And we thought maybe a trip to the wilderness would pull him out. So keep on doing what you're doing. Maybe we'll have some luck. Keep on doing what you're doing. We continue on. Beautiful vistas, more wildlife. And then we get to approach the mountain. There's a mountain approach, and I do this all the time. At the base of the mountain, we stop, and the special music I play in order to really inspire the people to this incredible scene that's ahead. And I hope the sound system works. All right, we're moving up. We're hanging on. Okay. We're looking around. We're seeing beautiful vistas, but I'm timing. The timing has got to be right, because there's a dip there, and if I'm too slow, I'll miss the crescendo. If I'm too fast, it won't work. Come on, hang on. Come on, you can do it. And oh my God, there's a whole flock of ptarmigans. Do I run them over? Look at the marmots on the road. Get out of the way, please. All right, come on. I'm speeding up. Oh, I'm a little behind. I got to gun it. Come on. Easy now. I'm almost there. Okay, there it is, the top of the ridge. I can make it. I can do it. Come on, horsepower. Come on, Cummins engine. Come on. And there. There it is. The mountain is there in all splendor. Oh, it's an orgasmic experience. And people are clapping just in the bus. That's exactly what they did. There it is. Your dream, you come. Your pilgrimage has been met. There is Denali. We get off the bus. I gravitate toward George. I say, George, isn't that incredible? Look at that beautiful mountain. And he's just... I do some pantomime for him. Boo. Boo. Right in front of George. Nothing. It always works with kids. What's going on? And so I say, all right, so I pretend, okay, here's a rope, and I'm going to lasso the mountain. We're going to pull it together. Here, George. Come on, let's pull together. And I have got him here. Let's pull. 1, 2, 3. He's not doing anything. Come on, lift up your hands, limp hands. 1, 2, 3. And the people are watching in the bus. They're outside, and they're smiling, and one person says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It'll happen. We get back on the bus, and we're going back now, second half of the tour. And there's a beautiful river and a bridge. We stop on that bridge. I always stop on there. Hopefully there's no other traffic. We're all alone. And I say all our lives we are slaves to time, especially on a tour. Time. When to get up. When to eat breakfast. When you got your tickets for the train. There's always time. But now we're going to work on here and now, because that's the essence of this. Here and now. You're here right now. I'm sorry we can't get out on the bus and do a 5-mile hike into the woods, but this is the best I can do. We're going to let Mother Nature sing to us through this river. We're going to be quiet, and we're going to listen and let that healing spirit of that river flow through us. And so here is the sound of that river. We're going to give it 30 seconds, okay? 30 seconds, take deep breaths, close your eyes, relax. Okay, 30 seconds. Beautiful. And people are usually, please stay longer. Please, please. I don't want to go back to the hotel. And we continue on our journey. The next stop, an hour and a half away, is Teklenika. And at Teklenika, nicknamed Tekalika, this is where they have a big deck. And we stand all around. I make sure people are seated in a half circle. Now we say thank you for the gorgeous gifts that have been given us on this tour. We do it by dancing the song that I taught you. Everyone, okay? And I get the men to, stand like you mean it. Get the balance. And I'm moving, 53 people. I'm working at it. I'm sweating. I'm working it. The women are standing behind, okay? And I want the women to be moving like this. And in the old days, I've seen pictures of hair spinning around as they really get into the song. Okay, and I go one round singing the song to them. One, nete, he, ho, ho, he, ho, ho, he, ha, hey. All right, and I say, okay, that's pretty good, all right. And sometimes I pick on somebody who looks totally spaz, and I move it around. I notice every time I do that, the sewer truck is always there pumping out sewage. But he stops when I'm there, because I'm the only one that does this. And other drivers come with their buses. Oh my God, Josh is there. It's going to ruin my day. Sorry, although I do encourage others to do this. All right, to join in with the dance. I give this drum. I always select someone to be the drummer. And who do I select? George. I give George the drum. He takes the drum, and his head is down. Take the drum, George. Take the drum. And holding my hand on his, I try to give him a beat. All eyes are on George, especially the group that's been with George all this time. But he's just, come on, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. And we hitting the drum, and I start singing, one, one, nete, he, nete, he. And he's just, come on, that's all right. We can take your time. One, one, nete, he, nete, he. And then something happens. I don't see it, but one of the others in the audience, his lips are moving. And he gets the rhythm. One, one, and he starts mouthing the words. People are singing. And he starts hitting the drum, and then he starts pounding the drum. Everyone is dancing. And they are dancing for George. He is hitting the drum, and finally he just smashes. He smashes it. And he is right there. He is just, words are coming out. And the whole group comes around. The whole bus, they are coming around. They are all around us. They are praying for him. They are saying so happy for him, but that something is happening. Something is coming out. And George gets up. And the first thing he says is, I'm thirsty. We get back onto the bus. And by the way, I didn't mention that all the animals that we saw, they were coming to this dance too, and they were crying too. They were watching the whole thing. We go back, and finally we get back to the hotel, and we leave the bus, and he is talking on the way. He's talking about what's this and what's that, and the mother is just tears. Everyone's got tears. He's talking. He hasn't talked for a whole year. And he's asking every question that he's trying to catch up. 1 year of silence. And then half hour back to the hotel. They leave, they get out of the bus. They're the last to get out. I say to George, I'm so proud of you. This belongs to you. It's for you. And as an afterthought, you know what he's doing now? He's training to be a talk show host on a radio station in Cincinnati. Thank you.
Josh Weiser. All right, a couple of your April Fool's memories. I was skiing with Junior Nordics. There was a dog on the trail. We tried to tell the coach about it, but he didn't believe us because it was April Fool's Day. He never saw it, but it was real. I believe you, if that helps. My brother's birthday is April 1st. When I was a kid, nobody ever believed that it was his birthday. I got in some fights about it to defend my brother's birthday. Can I tell you one of my own? Because you didn't submit enough, and it's my show. First of all, I think an April Fool's prank should be trying to convince someone that something crazy is true when it's not. All right. I had a colleague once who, for April Fool's, gave me little mini Oreos with toothpaste instead of regular filling in them. And I just felt like I'm still mad about that, because to me, that's not an April Fool's joke. And I gotta say, it was really hard for me to finish the bag, too. That took a lot of work. So I believe an April Fool's joke is about convincing someone that something crazy is true when it's not. And I also feel it's my duty to prepare my daughter so that she know, I want to be the first one of April Fool's to let her know it's April Fool's, so she doesn't get pranked at school. I feel like if you're going to embarrass yourself, you might as well do it at home, right? So one morning I got this idea. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I got to prank her somehow so that she doesn't go through the embarrassment at school. What am I going to come up with? It has to be something good, but not too good that she's really devastated afterwards. So she's getting ready for school, and I say, look, I have some kind of exciting news for you. A friend of mine has a pony, and he's going away for a month in the summer. And yeah, where were you, okay? I thought this was safe. I said he's going away for a month this summer, just a month. We're going to watch the pony. I thought a month was not long enough. I thought it'd be okay. Her eyes got big and glistening like those little stuffed animals at the store with like the giant eyes and just like radiating rainbows. I thought, oh no, this worked a little too good. So then I go, April Fools. And just as quick, her eyes shoot daggers at me and like fire shoots out of her ears. And so I learned that a month with a pony is a lot longer time to a little girl than it is to a grown adult. But I will say that I have now officially cured her of April Fools. This year I went up to her and I said, listen, I have some really good news. Due to budget cuts, school's going to have to close for the rest of the year. This is your last day of school. And she was like, April Fool's, Dad. I can't get her anymore. Okay, our next storyteller survived one of the most life-threatening experiences we've ever told here on Dark Winter Nights. It didn't involve bears or wolves. It was the Miss America pageant. And I'm not even joking. Please welcome Miss Alaska, Zoey Grenier. Does it work?
It does. I might have spoke too soon. Power button.
It was green. This wasn't your talent, I'm assuming, is microphone? Sorry.
No, my scenic work focused in paint.
Got it, okay. So I know my first question for you sounds kind of dumb, but I'm actually serious about it. What is it like to be beautiful? And I know people think I'm joking, but I genuinely wonder about this. Do you get free things all the time? Is it a hassle? What is it like?
I think aside from one or two free or partially discounted horchatas at Taco Bell, I live a life relatively free of bias.
So I just think you can't tell. Like the rest of us are like getting overcharged at Fred Meyer, and they're like, you know what? Just take it. We should try swapping for a day. I think that would be fun.
Sure, you can wear the heels.
Can I do the sash?
Yeah, sure.
We'll talk about. There's an element that this actually applies a little later. You told me that you're scared to talk to boys. Why are you scared to talk to boys? What more confidence would you need to, well, what scares you about boys?
It's a new social situation that I have to learn and adapt to, and there's unspoken rules and expectations that you're supposed to live up to, and that's all extremely stressful to me.
I find it funny because, like, the ugliest man still thinks he looks like Tom Cruise and has the confidence to go up to any woman. It's like, wait till she gets a load of this. And Miss Alaska's like,
That's okay.
But you do actually have a boyfriend.
I do.
But you're not allowed to talk about him.
I'm not.
And can you explain to these lovely people why you can't talk about your boyfriend?
Miss America has a clause in its contract that says if title holders are in a relationship, they will keep that relationship under wraps.
You're doing a great job, by the way.
I'm doing an awful job.
Did they explain it more to you, or this is just more down the lines of makes you seem more... I don't want to finish that sentence. Did they explain it to you?
No, it's one of those unspoken things that you're expected to understand, but it's a public image thing. They don't want their title holder out in public with a dude potentially behaving in a way that's not exactly appropriate. It's understandable, I guess.
I guess the same applies to my daughter, so it's nothing unusual here. You're studying to be a field biologist at UAA. What about that appeals to you? Why are you interested in that field?
Well, I think it's because I was right at the perfect age to get Pokemon when I was a little kid, and I quickly realized that the closest I could be to a Pokemon professor in real life was a field biologist. I'm not kidding. That's actually it. That's the whole reason. I also like science, and Dad made me watch a lot of Nova as a kid.
All right, good way to go, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
We love animal stories here at Dark Winter Nights. You told us that you were charged by moose on a ski trip one time. Can you tell us what happened with that?
Yeah, that was the very bad, no good Thursday ski. In Anchorage, there's a place called Powerline Pass, and it's this really pretty, gentle valley that kind of wanders through some mountains. It's gorgeous, and I love it. And in November of last year, it was one of the only skiable places in town, and so I took my trusty sidekick dog, Peebs, who's kind of, well, her name's Peebs. She's Peebs. And we went out for a ski, and it was really quiet in the valley, which is kind of unusual. There's normally a lot of chatter from, smaller animals in the food web, and it wasn't that way this time. And we really only made it maybe a kilometer before we ran into the first of 4 really mad moose. And this one from the side of the trail did that very explosive of breath at you, and we both turned, and it's got its hackles up and its ears back, and we just kind of skied past it as quickly as we could. And then we ran into Angry Moose number 2, which there's this one section that is the most straightaway you ever get. And at the rise of the hill at the end, there was a moose. And even from maybe a fourth of a football field away, it started to mock charge us. Ears back, hackles up, foot stomping, and Peebs and I left. We turned around, we're like, well, I guess we're not going to get to ski past that. But it wasn't over, because on our way back, Angry Moose number 3 popped up at us, now on the other side of the trail, and I could tell it was a different moose because this one had, where the horns used to be. I don't know the technical term for that, but it was a dude. We skied past him, my dog getting more and more distressed as this event continued. She was no longer running past me. She was kind of jogging at my side and looking at me like, what are we, why are we, what's going on? The final moose was the scariest. No, the second to last moose was the scariest. There's one more, it's 5 moose. As we're skiing up the valley, you can see, where the trail is, it's slightly raised, so you can see the true floor of the valley beneath you. And as we're skiing, I notice in my peripheral that there's something running parallel to us. And I look, and it's a moose. And as we continue to ski, this moose's trajectory is such that it's totally going to line up with us on the trail at some point. And so I'm starting to pick up my pace, and my dog looks like she wants to die, and we lose sight of the moose. And I assume, cool, okay, it's gone. It's veered off its path. It's happy. This is the end. No, it came charging out of the undergrowth at us and dodged right in front of my dog and I. And I think Parker peed. She was like, ah! And so we're skiing up the final hill. Finally, I assume, safe from moose. And these 2 dudes are jogging down the hill. I'm like, no, guys, watch out. The moose are really, they're not happy today. And they're like, yeah, whatever, blonde girl, and keep running. And then, 10 honest feet from the parking lot, a fifth and final moose charges my dog and I right in front of this poor old dude who was just trying to get a really nice picture of the moose on a frosty November morning. I don't know who was more scared, Peebs or him. One of the two for sure.
Wonder if he wet himself. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I peed on Powerline Pass Club.
Why did you decide to enter the world of pageantry?
I needed to pay for college.
Would you say it was easier or harder than the Army, I guess, if you were going to guess? There was an interesting affidavit that you had to sign. Would you like to explain to the audience what you had to affirm before you entered the world of pageantry?
Yep. Had to get a piece of paper notarized that said, I have never been a dude. Zoey Grenier, never been a dude.
I don't want to ask, but how did the notary help with this? I mean,
I put the piece of paper down in front of the notary, and they looked down, and they looked back up, and they said, are you kidding me? And I said, apparently not.
You'd be up for some other prizes if you had been, I just want to say. What were you thinking when you were selected for Miss Alaska? What was going through your mind?
Primarily just, I knew I trained better than her. I come from sport. I like to win.
So you had a little killer instinct in there. You're like, I got this. I so got this.
No, not at all. Going into Miss Alaska, I was, unsure. I've been told time and again by coaches that it's arrogant and incorrect of you to go into any competition thinking that you deserve to win. That's wrong. And if you enter a competition with that mindset, you're simply not going to find success. So coming into Miss Alaska, really all I was thinking was, I know I've trained to the best of my ability. I know that this competition that I'm bringing right now is as close to the national level as I'm capable of. And I have to trust myself.
Are there any other rules you have to follow as Miss Alaska for your year?
Well, I'm supposed to always have makeup on when I leave the house. I break that one a lot.
Oh man, I just wish there were like makeup police who would like tackle you to the ground and be like, eyeshadow! Eyeshadow!
Where are your fake eyelashes?
I'm just so fascinated by your world. I am just very interested.
Yeah, me too.
You have to have a chaperone at all times, too?
I do. Thanks, Dad.
And right now it's Dad, which is great. How you doing over there? How has that been? Has that been kind of weird? Literally, you have to leave the house with a chaperone constantly, or are there only certain circumstances?
Only if I'm appearing as Miss Alaska. If I've got the crown and banner, yeah, I'm supposed to have a chaperone. And it's actually a necessity. It's not at all. I illegally had an event without a chaperone, and it was one of the most awful experiences of my life. When you don't have a chaperone, you don't have anyone to advocate for you to the people you're working for, technically. And mine was a gala in February that went on for 7 hours. I only had a job for 1 hour of that, and the other 6 hours I was verbatim told to walk around and look pretty. It was awful. And at that same event, I had men ask me to kiss them for photographs and try and, hold my hand. And it's inappropriate and awful that people think they can cross these social barriers simply because I am wearing a crown. So no, I think the chaperone is very much, it's a good thing.
Was this a similar incident to what happened? You said there was a poetry event that didn't go well either.
Yeah. I've pretty aggressively spent my entire year trying to break every single beauty queen stereotype I can possibly shatter. And I really, I'd anticipated to a certain extent the negative view that we carry as a culture of pageantry, which isn't entirely unwarranted. But I simply was not ready for the severity with which it can hit. And I had one very bad experience in October where for an entire event, I was the butt of every dumb blonde joke and the butt of every single beauty queen joke, and the internet then tore me apart afterwards for having no idea about the art form I was judging, which in fact I did. I ran into one of the worst offenders later at a community service event where I was wearing dirty jeans and working very hard, and that was a pretty gratifying moment.
What was going to Miss America like? It sounds like it wasn't that much of a relaxing or fun time.
It had fun moments, but mostly it's 3 weeks of only getting 3 hours of sleep. And when you're not asleep, you are a beauty queen. You have to look perfect. You're held to societal standards. And you're also rehearsing and serving the public and going to events and upholding this figure, this character. It's intense. It's really hard.
You said some of the other contestants were actually humans?
Yeah, 5 of them.
What made them humans to you?
Well, I guess it all kind of went back to Orlando. They fly all 52 contestants up to Orlando. And for this event, we are watching our teen contestants, our teen counterparts, compete in their national pageant. And as I was leaving, I went to check my bags with concierge, and I'm standing there chatting with this dude, asking him about his day and interfacing with him like a human, because that's what I was raised to do. And he stops me and he goes, "Ma'am, are you with the Miss America organization?" And I said, "Well, yes, yeah, of course I am." And he goes, "You're just the first girl to look me in the eye all week." And that's, the girls who are willing to break that barrier that doesn't actually exist. Those are the girls who, in my books, were, legitimate humans.
You say that you told me that you have a sense for maybe why you didn't win Miss America. What went wrong, or differently, I guess I should say, because wrong may not be the word based on our discussions.
No. I probably should not verbatim repeat the question I was asked in personal interview, but it had to do with religion, and I was unwilling to sacrifice my opinion that religion should have absolutely no bearing on what a good or bad Miss America I would have made. Sorry.
And so there are a lot of elements of that organization that you don't necessarily agree with sort of your problems or the way they feel about the world. And
yeah, I mean, but that's understandable. Everybody comes from different perspectives, and I understand that they're looking for a very specific person to hold that title. And if that's what they need to do their job, that's great, but I'm not going to conform to that. I won't drink that Kool-Aid.
Are you glad you didn't win?
Oh, yeah. Miss America actually came to Anchorage a couple weeks back, and I took her out to dinner. I bought her some garlic fries. And the thing she kept saying was, "I'm just really lonely. I haven't seen my mom in weeks. I haven't seen my mom in a month. I'm surrounded by this elite upper class, and I'm lonely." And when I got into pageantry, I wanted to pay for college, sure, but I also did want to be a Miss Alaska. I wanted to represent our state. I wanted to be our ambassador. This is the state I grew up in and the state I love, and this is the job I'm interested in.
What advice do you have for the next Miss Alaska?
Do the things you love while you can, before you're crowned. Because you will not have time after you are crowned. It's immensely time-consuming. And remember that it's a wonderful experience and humbling and honoring, and it will make you grow in ways other things won't, but also you sacrifice a lot for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Alaska, Zoey Grenier.
Thank you so much.
All right, Zach, come out here and move these chairs. I'm my own sort of prima donna on here. I will not touch the chair. There it is. Thank you. Thank you. That's Zach Mason, ladies and gentlemen. I think I have a stand over there, too. Don't touch the tank. Okay. Which condiments require refrigeration and which don't? I'm constantly confused by this. Every time we have Tabasco, I have to check the entire bottle and figure out, does this go in the refrigerator? Does this go in the pantry? There's a lot of temptation to ignore those refrigerate after opening instructions. Our next story is a cautionary tale about the consumption of dubious condiments. Please welcome Eric Stevens with a story we call I Love You Anyway.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Wow, hello there. Well, so my spouse and I got married in December of 2001, December 15th, nice quasi-solstice wedding. And by 2003, it was time, well, you have an anniversary every year in December, so what are we gonna do this year? My spouse Deanne says, well, how about we have a little adventure, an Alaskan outdoor adventure. Even in the winter, you can do this. So there's Tolovana Hot Springs, right, north of town, about an hour's drive on the Elliott Highway. Let's go there. We'll ski in 11 miles over the up and down and all that. We'll get into the rustic cabins there in the hot tubs. We'll soak in the tubs. We'll have dinner. I'll whip up dinner. It'll be great. And we'll come back the next day, and it'll be fun, just a little micro adventure. Okay, what could go wrong? So let's go do that. And so we have Deanne's trusty old Subaru. Subarus are indestructible, or almost. Nice blue old wagon. And it's Deanne and me and the old orphan husky cow dog. He looked like a cow. He was white with a couple of black splotches. Good guy named Mr. Gertz. And the three of us head out. And when you go to Tolovana Hot Springs, the first thing you want to do in December is not leave at 11 in the morning, because there's only so much daylight to work with, so you got to leave early. Don't make the classic Fairbanks mistake and leave too late. Don't stop at Hilltop for extra pie. You gotta get to the trailhead. And trailhead is a overly grand word. Elliott Highway is kind of grand, but when you're driving down, it's this dirt road, and then there's a wide spot in the road, and you pull in on the left, and that's the trailhead, just this wide spot in the road where cars park. And we go up there, and that place, it's always windy at that trailhead, always. I've been there 3 times, but it's windy. The sample size of 3 shows 100% accuracy. It's always windy at the trailhead. And, well, we park the car there, we get all the gear, we got skis, and then you pull, your gear is in a little toboggan that you carry behind you. Now, if you pay over $100 for this, you go to Beaver Sports, it's called a pulk. If you go to Fred Meyer's, it's called a sled. You just get it for $10. But the nice thing about a pulk, too, and you can make this yourself, is if you have PVC piping you can put around, you have this strap around your waist, the piping goes back to the toboggan. That's important because when you're going downhill, you don't want the thing to run you over and all that. So we've got some mix of nice pulks and kind of homemade toboggan with duct tape kind of thing. So we got a couple of those. The dog even has a little vest with, so we can carry the dog food and everything. This is great. Park the car. Oh, it's near blizzard conditions, but it's just getting light out. This is going to be perfect. And okay, maybe not literally blizzard conditions by National Weather Service definition, but close. And I'm from North Dakota, and it's a lot like that up there. And we have a northeast wind, maybe 15, 25 miles an hour. Temperatures are 0 to 10 below kind of thing. Not too bad by interior Alaska standards for December. But, you got to have good gear on and all that. So as the Norwegians say, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So gear up. And out we go. And when you leave that parking lot, you go right downhill, and this is so much fun. Get out of the way, dog, and woo, and you crash once in a while, but that's okay. And you go down, and then this flat, cold part, and then you come up, and then you're up on this knob of terrain where it's too brutal for trees, that it's always windy, and it's just bare. It's like this, and there's nothing. And you just try to get through that part as quick as you can because of the wind, and you're going, and then you come down, and there you are. 11 miles later, we made it past the moonscape. Now we're at the hot springs. So we have this cabin. It's rustic. Rustic means no water, no electricity, no heat, other than what you facilitate yourself by firing up the wood stove, by going out to the little hole in the ground and getting water out of there. And you have a Coleman stove, so if you bring some of your own fuel, you can cook things up. We get there, we get things squared away. I'm unpacking the sleeping bags to put on the little bunks there and everything, and Deanne says, we're going to have dinner. This is anniversary dinner. She pulls out, I was in my pulk, I didn't even know it. She was clever in that way. And there's steak. We're going to have steak and a bottle of champagne. This is going to be so much fun. So she whips it together there, and I'm straightening things out, and then I don't do much but sit there, wait for food, I guess. And, okay, here's steak. And this is our anniversary dinner, even by candlelight. It had to be candlelight, but it was candlelight. Anniversary dinner. And then Deanne says, oh, Eric, would you like anything with your steak? And I thought, well, is there asparagus? And she said, no, I mean, here we have some salt and pepper was about all she brought. And I'm from North Dakota, so that's where it stops. You got to draw the line. because there could be moral corruption beyond the salt and pepper stage. But Deanne sees, at these cabins, you should bring everything, because if you want to have toilet paper, bring toilet paper. But there might already be some toilet paper there. There's this old deck of playing cards from the Eisenhower administration or something like that. There's stuff in the cabins, but you never quite know what it's going to be. Well, we get there, and on the windowsill in this little cabin is a half-empty little bottle of A1 steak sauce with a nice little bit of crust around the cap there. And Deanne says, well, how about some steak sauce? And I said, well, no, I'm going to, remembering the North Dakota thing, I said, no, I better not. Don't want to get too crazy. And she says, all right, suit yourself. And she puts it on there and says, this is pretty good steak sauce. I go, okay. And we have dinner. That's great. The dog gets dinner. We go out and soak in the hot tubs for a little bit. Oh, that was fun. We go back. We're going to finish off the champagne, go to bed. This has been the greatest little anniversary trip ever. Next morning, we get up. And a lot of my life is about being oblivious. And so I don't notice things until afterwards when they're explained to you, and you go, oh, yeah. Well, it turns out that morning, Deanne woke up, and she didn't feel so good. And so you're out camping. What do you have? You got to have oatmeal, right? Instant oatmeal. That's what makes the world go around. And so, oatmeal, I love oatmeal. Bring it on. And, Deanne eats her oatmeal, and, well, we got some extras. I'll take it, so I eat that all up. And I go, okay, well, I got to wax up the skis. We're going to get ready to go. Oh, so I'm out waxing the skis, and then Deanne, discreetly and subtly and without my knowledge, goes to the outhouse, and blah, it's all gone. Got rid of that oatmeal. She's sick. She is in a bad way. But she comes out of the outhouse like this. And so I don't know. And, okay, I got your skis waxed up. The pulks look good. We're ready to go. Okay, let's go. So 11 miles back to the car. This is the journey of the day. It's just starting to get light out. Perfect timing. We hit the trail, go up, and we get up to that. We're starting to get to that knobby moonscape part on the top. And we get there, and then I'm thinking, okay, from what I've learned about being outside, these kinds of things, where this is a whole day activity, you got to drink water before you're thirsty. You got to eat food before you're hungry. You do not want to crash aerobically. You don't want to fall behind on this stuff. So I announced when we get up to the top, hey, how about a snack? You want some M&Ms or something? Deanne goes, nah, I don't really like M&Ms. And I said, okay, I'll eat M&Ms. You want some water? We got some water. You should drink water. And she says, no, I'm not thirsty. I go, well, you got to drink. Here, drink some water. Come on, you got to drink. She goes, okay. And she takes a couple sips of water and hands me back the water bottle, and I'm putting it away. When I hear this sound, I look up, and there Deanne, she goes like this. And it's gone. And I said, what's going on? She says, oh, I don't feel good. Earlier, I couldn't keep my breakfast down, and I'm nauseous, and I'm tired, and I just want to take a rest. And we've gotten up to the part of the trail where there's no resting here now. We're in the moonscape part, and the northeast wind there, like 15, 25, and we got to keep moving. You got to keep going. And the car, we're not wait for tectonic drift to take us to the car. We got to go. And I'm starting to get a little worried about this. Okay, so I say, let's go. I'm going to ski behind Deanne so that if she wants to stop, and she's slowing down, and I give her this friendly little encouragement called a nudge. Like, okay, let's go. Got to keep going. She goes, yeah, whatever. And I go, go. And she keeps slowing down. And I go, come on. And I'm watching the time, and I'm German anyway, so it's all about time. And come on. And at one point, we're not going to make it. So I go, come on, Deanne, we have got to go. And she stops. And she turns around, and she says, quit pushing me. And then I thought, we are going to die out here. This is not working out. So I said, okay. And we'll back off, but we got to keep going. Okay, we'll keep going. We get down in that bottom part, and I came up with this bright idea. I'll tell you what, Deanne, just unbuckle your pulk. We'll leave it here, and we'll get up this last couple miles up to the car, and which I don't tell her, but I tell myself, and the car will start. And then you can sit in the car with the dog, get all warmed up, and I'll come down, be the superhero, and I'll ski down and grab your pulk, and I'll ski up with that, and then we'll load up and go back to town. Okay, great plan. So we get up to the top of that, the last bit, up, and we come around to the right, and there's the parking lot, and sure enough, there's the car with a about this much snowdrift on the one side and bare gravel on the other side because it's all windy up there. And find the keys, get in the car, and I pray to Japanese-American collaboration. And, oh, come on. And it starts, yes. There you go. There are no plugins out there either. So the car starts up, trusty old blue Subaru wagon. Dan, everything is working out wonderfully. You stay here, the dog will stay here, and I will retrieve your gear. Be back shortly. So, I'm like 12 feet tall now, and I ski down there, and I get the pulk, and I turn around, come back, it's slower going back, but, uphill with the weight. Get up there, come around to the right, and I get to the parking lot, and there's no car. And this is a bare piece of gravel. I mean, you can't, if there was a car there, you would see it. But still, I turn around. Where's the Subaru? It's gone. And then I thought, you know what? Maybe I really pushed her one too many times. She might be in the car right now thinking, you know what? We've been married for a couple of years. We gave it the good try. And I know that after 2 years, we went from the I love you phase of our relationship to the I love you anyway phase. And now maybe I had just gone over the edge of that cliff too. And she's thinking to herself, you know what? Screw him. This way, it'll look like an accident. It'll look like we'll let Mother Nature do the dirty work out there. And besides, he deserves to suffer just a little as he goes. And I'll tell the police that I was so delusional in my flu and food poisoning that I thought he was in the car with me and I just drove. He's not very talkative. He's from North Dakota. I thought he was with me. And, well, so now you got to drink before you're thirsty. You got to eat before you're hungry. And then I think, well, I got to find shelter before I die of frostbite. And there's these two pulks now. We have the one that I had brought up earlier, and now Deanne's pulks. And I thought, we got there's gear in the pulks. Nice sleeping bags, 40 below sleeping bags. And then, okay, we can do this. So I empty out stuff. The vision here is I'm going to make a clamshell out of these two pulks, and I'm going to get in there. And the metaphor at work here is clamshell. It is not coffin, even though it could, there's overlap. But so I'm getting ready, and I'm positioning this clamshell so that I can open it up and look for cars as they maybe go by, and then I can go, shields down, and I'm getting ready, and I'm going to get in my clamshell, and then sure enough, toward the east, in the darkness, is these distant headlights through the wisps of snow. I think there's something coming. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to jump out and flag this guy down. And I want to flag him down urgently, but not like crazy urgent, like this, because then he'd just keep going or run me over. And so, okay, I'm going to be appropriately assertive. And the car's coming and it starts to slow down. I think, good news. And it's a blue Subaru wagon. And there's Deanne. And I say, hey, Deanne, what's going on? And she says, oh, you know what? It was so cold and windy up here that the car just sitting here idling after it had been here for a full day and a half, it wasn't generating any heat. It was an exothermic combustion that I was just shivering in there. The dog was shivering. So I wanted to get the car under power, so I drove, down the road about 20 minutes or something, came back. And I said, yeah, that's what I thought you probably did. Yeah. So we got back in the car, everything loaded up, the dog's wagging his tail. And so I've learned that, there are times when you can nudge a loved one, but maybe it's good to know also when not to push too hard. And there she is. We're still alive. We're still married. Yeah. And that is it. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Eric Stevens. Okay, some of your April Fool's memories. As I sat down to use the bathroom just now, I had the distinct memory of last April Fool's Day at Lathrop as a senior, spreading a thick layer of Bengay on the toilet seats. That's why we waited till now to have this show. We made a fake newsletter for my grandma at her old folks' home. It had a fake menu and said there was a problem with feral cats in the building. She hated cats. I just want to be clear, Dark Winter Nights does not condone playing pranks on old people, but that's totally hilarious. Okay. At work, we put a sign on one of the two entrances, use other entrance. This one currently blocked. Of course, the second entrance, 5 minutes away, had the same sign. Everyone spent a lot of time walking around. You don't work at the DMV or something, do you? That sounds like a joke for them. Okay. Our next storyteller survived a killer avalanche just 16 months ago. In the wake of several recent avalanches here in the interior of Alaska, he's here tonight not just to tell an incredible story, but to try and save your life by sharing what he learned from that experience. Please welcome Mike Hopper with a story we call Womp.
I was told I mumble, so I want to make sure this is close. I've told this story now, half a dozen times. And the audiences have always been other backcountry skiers, mountaineers. I felt kind of a duty after losing my friend Eric Peterson and my dog Rowdy to share some of the things we learned, some of the mistakes we made. It's never been a fun story to tell, and I wasn't planning on telling it tonight. Then the day when they approached me about telling the story, gave me a couple of days to think about it, I'd already decided I would just do a recording of it. But I never thought of standing in front of people. Then I got word about Claire Sundgren's death a week ago, 10 days. And something changed, and I texted back and said I would do this. And in the week since then, as you all know, Russell Lensman, if I said that right, also passed away. So something's changing in the Alaska Range. But I'm not going to talk to you about avalanches. I'll tell you what it's like to survive one, but I'm going to talk to you about a dog. So settle in, because this is guaranteed to bring you right down. We got my dog Rowdy around the same time that we were scheduled to open our lodge in Black Rapids. I'm going to assume most of you know where that is. It's not the Parks Highway, it's the other highway. This beautiful place called Isabel Pass. And I had waited a few years now to get a dog. The last dog I had was a red Siberian that trying to keep him penned in at a home in Goldstream Valley was a life's work. And trying to keep him penned in in the Alaska Range, we built our cabin, turned out to be even more difficult. He runs with the wolves, as we say now. So I was determined before I got another dog to wait till he could be with me all the time. I picked him up out of a litter of about 10 puppies with about 10 little kids running around in the parking lot of Fred Meyer's. And I'll never forget, from the moment I had him in front of my Dodge truck, he curled up next to me and promised never to go away. He was the dog every boy deserves, no matter how old you are. I couldn't have trained him to do the things he did at our lodge. He would take people out for walks and hikes in the woods and not come back without them. He had a way of begging that made you feel gifted to give him something. But most of all, Rowdy loved to ski. I'm a backcountry skier, which is kind of it's sort of like a hermit skier. You value the solitude of the mountains as much as you do your turns. But Rowdy broke that solitude. As a pup, he wasn't even a year old when I first took him out in the mountains of Isabel Pass. Back then, he was so small still that he'd kind of disappear in the snow. But even then, he would race me down the hill, and I was on skis. I remember the first time I took him was just an experiment. I didn't know if he'd plunge up to his shoulders in snow, but he had big feet, and from day one, I knew I had the right dog. Well, I have countless GoPros of me and Rowdy skiing together. I'm not the safest skier in the world. When I didn't have someone to ski with, I'd ski with Rowdy. That goes against all avalanche protocol, but me and Rowdy had a great time together. About 16 months ago, December 6th, I'm getting ahead of myself just a bit. Go back a year before that. We had one of those first winters where, if you can remember a couple years back, where it rained mid-January. Do you remember that? That was the first time I ever saw avalanches in Isabel Pass. They came down the next day like huge masses of porridge. They were just everywhere. I'd never seen anything like it. It destroyed our skiing for that year. So a year, coming up to the following winter, this is 2014, the winter of 2014-15, we were snow-starved. We hadn't had any spring skiing the year before to speak of. And I was just chomping at the bit to go, as was Rowdy. But something had been happening to Rowdy in that year in between. He would get these chronic ear infections, real painful ones, and we kept taking him to this animal hospital, and they would proceed to traumatize him, cleaning his ear out, and he'd come back okay for a couple of days and get another horrible ear infection. We didn't know what was wrong with him. So around November, or early November, we were getting so anxious to ski that I took him up to Rainbow Basin. Some of you know where that is. It was still so thin of snow that we, drove halfway in, but we were really anxious to ski. I went with a good old friend of mine, and I hiked the rest of the way on our skis and brought Rowdy with us, and halfway up I knew something was really wrong with Rowdy. He couldn't keep up, and Rowdy could never not keep up. Anytime you went skiing with Rowdy, he'd travel maybe 10 times whatever you managed to do. That's just going in. But he couldn't even get up to the top of the hill. And I knew something was really wrong, and it wasn't ear infections. I ended up racing into town with him. I went to a different animal hospital. Thank you, Aurora Animal Hospital. They diagnosed him almost immediately with Addison's disease. That's what JFK had, right? Rowdy was a chocolate lab Springer Spaniel mix, and one of those sides is vulnerable to it, apparently. He was hospitalized for 3 days. But when he got out, he was quickly his same old self. About a month later, I get a call, or a text actually, from my friend Eric Peterson. 7 inches of fresh snow at Trim's Camp. We're on. So he comes running down from Delta, where he just moved back to. Eric's a whole other story, but he came running down the next morning, bright-eyed, big, huge, muscular, 35-year-old guy, and just one of the most amazing mountaineers I've ever known. And there's me and my newly rehabilitated dog, Rowdy, and Eric. It's December 6th, so it really was a dark winter tale. There's not much sunlight, and what there is pretty flat. We don't care. We haven't skied in over a year. So we started up this little draw, this little pass. It's sort of a notch in Rainbow Ridge, those of you who know the area. It's a big sweeping ridge, right? And there's a notch at the end and another peak. Up through that notch takes you some of the most easily accessible and beautiful skiing in the Isabel Pass area. We ski it all the time usually for our first runs, because you can get high real fast, and I mean legally. And the snow stays, right, and comes there earliest. So that was always one of our first early season ski areas. The pass is, it's a notch kind of through the hills, and as you approach the crest of this little notch, this little pass into another drainage, there's a side valley that shoots off. Now you have to kind of stay with me on this part because I got to describe it for you. So you get up over that notch, up to that pass, and then you turn left up that valley, this side valley. And as you go up this side valley, to your right, maybe 1,500, 2,000 vertical feet, is a ridge, right? On the side of the valley. And there are these spines coming down, creating all these little side valleys. Does that make sense? So they're all coming down. And the cool part about this is you can go up, you can ski all those spines. There's like 3 or 4 different little valleys as you go up. And this valley you're going up ends in a big, huge bowl at the end. So the area really calls to skiers because you can ski almost anywhere and anything, depending on your skill level and what the snow looks like. We've done it. I've done it many, many times. I won't bore you a lot with some of the warning signs we did get, but we chose to ski past. But suffice it to say, we were nervous, a little nervous going up it. But we kept poking snow, which is what you do in the backcountry to sort of test for its stability as you go. And the further up we got, the deeper the snow got and the more solid it seemed to us. As you get to the far end and you reach this bowl, you then have to there's one last spine coming down. It marks the end of this ridge here and the beginning of this big, huge bowl. And you have to kind of hug your way up around that far side of this spine coming down, if that makes sense. We'd begun that final approach. We were, from coming up out of the valley floor up to the top is probably maybe a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile final ski up. We had gone about maybe 2/3 of the way up that final approach, and it started to steepen. Just as it did that, my friend Eric, who was in front like he always was, noticed something different about the snow, and he drew my attention to it. Underneath this new 6 inches of fresh snow we had was a layer, like a chunky layer of almost yellow, looked like yellow hardened sort of snow. We hadn't seen anything like that down lower, and we both were pretty nervous at that point. We both were pretty experienced backcountry skiers and did not like the feel of it. We started talking immediately about hugging this spine that we were contouring up next to, hugging closer to that, because we noticed as you got to the snow in the spine, it was all good. That little layer, that hardened layer is what snow can slide on. Any snow that falls on top of it at a certain angle is prone or vulnerable to sliding off, so it causes avalanches. So we weren't completely unaware that we were in a dangerous situation. We were just trying to mitigate the danger by hugging this spine, and actually we got to the point where we started looking and making mental notes to ourselves of rocky outcroppings so we could stay off this section. It wasn't 3 minutes, 4 minutes after we'd noticed that change in the snow, as we were cutting back over towards the spine. It was steep enough we had to do little switchbacks, so we were trying to stay close to the spine. As we started cutting back over to it, we heard a distant whoomph. The title of this talk was misspelt. It's more like a W-H-U-M-P-F. It's sort of like a whoomph. It's a softer sound. We both instinctively knew what it was. If you've ever been backcountry skiing, it's a sound you don't like to hear. But you could barely hear it. What it was the sound of a layer of snow that had been precariously perched on a fragile layer beneath it, collapsing. When it collapses, if you're on a steep enough angled slope, that's how avalanches start. So you have this layer of snow collapse and then slides. My friend Eric was ahead, about 20 feet of me, and Rowdy was right behind him. And I remember his words was, "Did you hear that?" It was that distant. In the time it took for me to register what he'd said, I turned back and looked uphill. I was further out on the slope, the bowl slope, looking uphill at the uphill horizon. In the time it took for me to notice him, ask that question, and turning my vision back up, I saw a 12-inch whitewater appear upslope about 20, 25 feet of me. It looked like a whitewater wave. I knew immediately what it was. I also knew I was toast. I had been knocked over 2 seasons before by a very small side thing, and I remembered how unbelievably powerless I felt, and I knew there wasn't anything I was going to do. Besides, I had skins on my skis still. I was pointing uphill, kind of sideways to this wave coming at me. I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't do anything. I was going to be, and I knew it, a tree chopped down right at the ankles and over. That wasn't my worry. I saw the whitewater wave appear, and as I turned back to my friend, I saw Rowdy bolting for all he was worth for the safety of that spine. But even by then, in the time it took me to turn my head back towards him, the wave had already caught up with his hindquarters, so I knew he was engulfed. What was amazing about the whole experience is how fast your mind works under these circumstances. So I was registering my chances, everything. I looked, I saw Rowdy. My last words to my friend Eric were, "Watch Rowdy, watch for Rowdy." I only had time to say it once. I thought he was safe. He was over closer to the spine, further uphill. I thought he was out of the path of this avalanche. By dint of me switchbacking toward the slope, I knew I was toast, but I had a beacon on. I figured he'd find me. I knew Rowdy didn't have a beacon. I wanted to make sure he kept eyes on Rowdy, get him first, and then come for me. That was my thinking. I don't remember being hit by the avalanche, though I must have. This was what is called a soft snow avalanche. Remember, this was brand new snow. This was some of the first snow of the season. So it hadn't been wind affected yet, hadn't turned into a hard, compact thing like the recent avalanches down at Arctic Man in April. This was soft snow, but a slab. I mean, it was still all collapsed and all started coming. The whoomph we heard, that distant whoomph, was the fact that it actually fractured. That means it broke away from the existing snow far up on a ridge, probably 400 or 500 yards upslope from us. We'd walked right into it, bomb. I remember getting knocked down. I don't remember being impacted. My next memory really is of sliding on my stomach in total darkness. Like head first, right? Just sliding downhill, moving super fast. And I remember going through a checklist of all the things I'd learned in avalanche classes, what you're supposed to do if you get caught. The first was swim, right? Swim to the surface. Well, it's like swimming in white water, the snow I was in anyway. So it took me a split second to realize that was a dumb idea. I wasn't going anywhere. I mean, there was no purchase. It was like fluff around me, like black fluff. The next thing I remember was one of the things that saved my life. It was to keep the area in front of your face clear. So not knowing what else to do and sliding for all I was worth, I started just doing this frantically, just in front of my face, just keeping the area in front of my face clear. I also remembered that snow packs in any orifice. So I remember going like this, squeezing my eyes as tight as I could and shut my mouth as tight as I could. The slide went on forever. I was conscious the entire time and realized, I was going through calculations like for how long this could go, where I was on the mountain. And my only fear really was if it went too long, I would end up in the bottom of the valley, buried beyond recovery, right? It's called the terrain trap, where you go down and the snow then just keeps piling on top if you hit the bottom of the valley. So the only worry I had, and this is really kind of odd, the only worry I had was it going to stop, or would I get all the way to the bottom? If I got to the bottom, I knew I was dead. And it was with a kind of quiet certainty I accepted that fact, but I was certainly praying to stop. And sure enough, slowly it stopped. The minute it stopped, when it slowed and then it stopped, I went like this. And I just shoved all the snow that I'd been keeping away from my face, away from my face. And I was completely confident that I would find air. I had absolutely no reason to expect that when I look back now. But I knew I was, if it stopped, I was okay. I had this certainty about it. And I was. I went like this, and there was air. I took a huge, first breath in. By the way, one thing interesting, you're not aware when you're sliding like that you're holding your breath. I had no awareness of, like that. It was just, please stop, because if you don't, I'm dead. But there wasn't ever a panic about losing my breath and not having enough air. When I stopped, though, man, I tried to take a huge breath. I ended up sucking in a huge mouthful of snow. I don't know how that happened, because I had my mouth shut the whole time. Spit that out. Noticed there was a bunch of blood on it, and I didn't know where that came from. But then took a lungful of air. And, then tried to assess my situation. What I found was, even though it felt like I was just slid in my stomach the whole way down and was going like this, I ended up propped upright slightly at an angle. The snow was over my head, and I had a kind of window, was what I'd been able to shove snow out of. It took me a little bit to realize, well, I didn't realize at first. I kept trying to shovel more, because all I had was my face clear. Everything, this hand was free, and everything else was pinned. I shoveled snow out. I tried to shove it up, but it was like being buried in sand. It all kind of started sliding in on me. At that point, I figured, okay, I can't get myself out. And I noticed I had a ski pole on my hand, on my right wrist, the one that was free. I took it off, and I reached up as far as I could, and I stuck the ski pole out. I was convinced my friend was still free. I didn't know about Rowdy, but I was sure my friend was free. I tried yelling once, but the sound doesn't carry real good when you're buried in snow. And so I waited a couple minutes, and then I started to dawn on me that if someone was going to do rescuing, it might well have to be me. So I started trying to dig my way out with one hand. And it didn't last very long, because the snow kept falling in my face and reburying me. And at that point, I remembered I had that ski pole. So I reached back out and I grabbed the ski pole back in, and found that if I took the little basket end of the ski pole, I could shove that much of snow away from where I was trying to dig myself out. What I began to realize slowly is that I had ended up near the leading edge of the avalanche. I didn't know how big it was until I got out. But what had happened is I was able to punch a window out to the front leading edge. If I'd been back a foot further, I couldn't have done what I did. You have to have some place to push the snow. So over the next couple hours, I've estimated, I was able to shove little, big tablespoons of snow away as I dug away with my right hand. Long story short, slowly, I was able to dig enough away to where I could reverse the ski pole, chop myself out, free my upper body, reach behind, grab a snow shovel. By that point, I knew I was good, dug myself out. I did manage to wrench my knee in the process, because I started getting cramps. That's how long it took. So I tried to pull my feet out of my ski boot, and that didn't work. But I finally was able to dig down to my feet, where I discovered that I still have my skis on, which is another thing that saved me. I bent down, finally was able to unclip and crawl out of my hole. I immediately put everything I had on, because I was pretty hypothermic. Went to look for my avalanche beacon, stumbled around to turn to receive so you could find out where Eric was. And I looked uphill, and about 20 feet away from me, I saw a black spot in the snow. I scrambled over to it. It was my friend's ski glove. He had done what I did, essentially. He was trying to reach for the surface. He could just reach the surface. We were both buried similarly. I dug down, but I sort of knew. I mean, it had been 2.5 hours by that point. When I reached him, I realized he was gone. I didn't have much experience with death, but there's a life force in certain people when it leaves them. There's no question. I didn't feel for a pulse. I remember that. And I kind of regret that, but it wasn't any doubt in my mind. At that point, it was just a matter then of getting myself out before I froze to death. I don't remember much of the ski out. I went back and dug the rest of my skis out, put them on. I had a headlamp. I'd always ski with a headlamp. It was dark by the time I started out, so we left. We started at 10:30. I think the avalanche hit around 1:30. I think it was probably around 4:30 by the time I started out. Give you a timeline. And I made it to the highway. I looked very briefly for my dog, but I knew I couldn't find him, and I thought to say goodbye. It took hours to get a ride. The key to the truck was with Eric. And I ended up at the emergency room and on and on. Well, 2 weeks later, the troopers had called in an avalanche expert from Anchorage, Valdez, next day or so. I was in touch with her, and we called off the immediate search the night of the avalanche. I warned them all off because the place had freaked me out, and I knew it was dangerous to go up there. And the troopers, in following some advice, they basically cordoned off the area and told nobody to go in, and they told us that it would be summer or spring when they could go to a recovery, which wasn't what I wanted to hear. So on the 21st, true beginning of winter, a buddy of mine, a former captain from the training center next door, who was on his honeymoon at the lodge, and I went up to reconnoiter to see what conditions looked like. Long story short, we scared ourselves into getting there, and we found the spot where Eric was buried. I had marked it with an avalanche probe. We discovered at that time the true extent of the avalanche. It wasn't just one avalanche that broke up above us on that side of the spine. It broke also, the fracture continued up high and continued off the adjoining valley. It was two huge avalanches came together. The fact that my avalanche, our avalanche, beat the other one down is another reason I was able to save my life. If this side had come down first and we hit the side of it, I wouldn't have made it either. So I shouldn't be standing in front of you on any number of accounts. We dug down to find my friend. And true to his nature, you could tell from his slide and the position of his body that he had fought the whole way down. I knew when I saw the thing having been knocked over, it was useless to fight, but he was bigger and stronger and maybe more aggressive than I was. He fought the whole way down. What was surprising, and if there's any grace in the story, was the fact that as we got close and we got his upper body uncovered, we found Rowdy. Rowdy didn't fight it either. Rowdy was curled up against Eric's back. And in front of his face was a cave, like a iced over cave. If I had been buried and I managed to keep doing this, I might have been able to, if I'd been completely buried and could never get snow, I might have been able to keep a cave in front of my face. The problem is, as you breathe and exhale, it coats that cave with ice, and you can't pull the oxygen from the snow. any longer, and you go to sleep and die. Well, my friend Rowdy, curled up against Eric's back, had dug a cave with his front feet. And from the expression on his face and his position, I could tell that he'd just gone to sleep. The other thing I took some solace in, and I do to this day, was that his right paw was on Eric's shoulder. We brought them both down. It took us 2 days. And it's been 16 months. When I heard of the 2 most recent avalanche deaths and the near misses in recent times, I realized a couple things. I realized things are changing down there, so be careful. We need to do some work to make things safe for us to play down there still. But I have one secret kind of thought, and that is that Rowdy never left those mountains. And then when someone's caught like we were, that he's still there, and he provides some comfort in those last minutes to people. It's the only solace I can take from this. But thanks.
Mike Hopper. All right, a few more of your April Fool's memories. In high school, we saran wrapped a lot of people's cars, which was honestly super fun, but pretty sure the joke was on us. We spent a lot of money. One of my coworkers showed up wearing a nifty suit. Everyone commented on, "What's the occasion? You sure clean up well." As the day wore on, each of us noticed a thread and reached out to lift it off, so he'd look super slick. Alas, the thread was on a spool in his pocket. We had an arm's length of thread for our efforts. And the time Rob Prince and I went skinny dipping in Smith Lake, only to be caught by several researchers who were conducting an experiment with their graduate students. We were far enough away I thought not to be recognized, but Rob insisted on wearing one of his bow ties before he yelled, "Cannonball!" and jumped in, so they figured it out. Ha ha, early April Fools. I don't know if my wife is listening right now, but I have no idea what that story is about. By the way, a video, actually pictures of Rowdy should be posting on Facebook right about now if you'd like to see Rowdy, and we hope to have a video up there on Facebook at some point this week. Okay, it's time for us to pick our audience storyteller. Y'all remember the rules? Thank you. Okay, here we go. Send in FacultyBot 2000. For those of you listening at home, about a 4-foot plastic robot is making its way out here at about half a mile an hour. You know, fate would just have this replace me, don't you? I mean, I'm feeling a little threatened. Maybe. Okay, here we go. Good. Okay, back this way. Cool. You're almost there. Okay, that's close enough. Raise the arm. No. We don't need to play that yet. Round of applause for FacultyBot 2000. It's going to save the state a lot of money. Okay, here we go. Our audience storyteller is Amanda Byrd. Come on down. Keep the applause going. This is an awkward moment. That's more like it. Hey, thank you.
Wow. Hands? Yeah, a little shaking. Wow, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm from Australia, and the most dangerous animal in Australia is like little, like spiders and snakes and stuff. So when I moved to Alaska, I encountered bigger animals like moose. And I've since learned that moose are kind of the most terrifying animals in the state. I will take a bear over a moose any day. So there was one year when I was racing, when I moved to Alaska, I pretty much jumped in 2 feet and decided to get sled dogs. And so there was one year that I was ski joring that I was labeled the Moose Magnet. And I was given this name from one of the local ski jourers, Tom McGrain. He said, you know, one person every year is the Moose Magnet, and I think you are it. And pretty much every year, every time I went out ski joring, I had a moose encounter, whether it was running across the field or running beside me, or the the 3 dogs that I had in front of me and the cow and calf that I'd split on the trail. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm just going to duck and yell to the dogs, on by, and I could have slapped that moose on the side, but I didn't get kicked. So a few years later, I was in the Limited North American. I was in the 8-dog class, and I was currently in 5th position, and it was the second day. And there was some moose on the trail that I'd heard about. And on the second day, there'd usually been a second day moose somewhere. You'd see a flicker of a moose somewhere, and maybe there'd be a moose over in the field or something. But this day, I'm going along. My team is just hauling butt. We're in 5th place. We're doing really well. And the ears of my dogs go up at about 1.5 miles into the race, and I'm like, oh crap. And you know when you see like in a documentary or a reenactment that it just looks too clear, it's too real for what actually happened. So I'm on my sled dog. My dogs are hauling butt. They're probably doing like 22 miles an hour. And a moose comes out of the woods, and the dogs just stop. And my dogs actually stopped and lay down on the trail. And I had so much momentum that I actually went over my wheel dogs and landed between my wheel dogs and my team dogs. And at this point, I then fell to the side. And so there's a moose standing right over the top of me. And has anyone here heard a moose roar before? Put your hand up. All right, so I'm not alone. I am not alone. That moose roar. And they roar. So I'm laying down, and I am on the ground. I've got 2 dogs behind me, 6 dogs ahead of me. I'm on the ground, and this moose is standing over the top of me, and it has just roared in my face. And I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, I've never been told what to do when a moose roars at you and it's standing over the top of you. So do you move fast or do you move slow? It's like, okay, with bears, it's like, don't run. What do you do? So I'm like, oh crap, okay. So during this thought process, the moose jumps me and is now standing on the other side of the trail and is looking at me like, oh yeah? Really? You're gonna deal with me? And I'm like, oh crap, okay, really think about this. So I'm like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stand up, I'm gonna run backwards and run over the back of my wheel dogs again, so now my team is entirely in front of me, and then we're gonna go. So I'm like, okay, this is how it's gonna go. Yep, it's gonna happen. So muster up the courage, stand up, run backwards, jump the dogs, line the team out, get the dogs up and say, let's go. And so off they go. And we're going now. We've still got, I think, about 9.5 miles to go of this race. And I'm standing on my sled going, oh my gosh. And I start to put my foot on my mat to slow the team down, and then I start going sewing machine leg. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, stop. How about I put both feet on the mat? And then they're both going, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, okay, I can just deal with one. I'll just do sewing machine leg for the rest of the 9 miles. And as I went around the turnaround judge, I yelled, moose attack, moose back there. And so they had told the finish line judge that there was an angry moose out there. So I finished, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the scariest thing. I finished, I got to my truck, put my hook into the ground, and burst into tears. And it was the most terrifying event. So I had to go out the next day, and I had to redo that tour, redo that course. and, watching the dog's ears, making sure, they're the telltale signs of what happens for you. And there was no moose that day, the second day, but the race marshal had given me a packet of rubber bullets, and he said, "Here you go, this is for you." And I said, "Well, what do I do? How do you hold these? When do you like throw them at them, or what is the protocol here? I don't have a gun." And he's like, "Oh, well, that's not going to work then. You're supposed to have a shotgun." I was like, "Oh, well, I don't want to have a shotgun. I'm more likely to kill my dogs than I am anything else." So every single year since that year that I raced limited class mushing, every second day of the limited North American, there would be a moose. And you would see a flicker in the woods, and it was just the smallest little flicker. But it was enough to tell you that there was something out there, and it's like, okay, brace for it. It's going to cross the path. It's going to run beside you. Something's going to happen. And it's like, it would happen. You would get through it. Good. Second day moose is done. And the last year that I raced the limited North American, second day moose happened. Okay, I'm clear. It's all good. Coming home, hauling butt. Dogs are doing great. There was a third day moose, and I yelled at that moose. This moose was huge. It was the biggest moose I've ever seen. And I was like, "There is no third day moose." So anyway, that was my moose story. So thank you.
Amanda Byrd, very nice. Our next storyteller is a graduate of the inaugural Dark Winter Nights Storytelling Workshop. I'd like to take full credit for her storytelling ability, but frankly, it's not possible that she got this good in the short amount of time that we had with our students. So please welcome Kaiti Ott with a story we call Murphy's Law. Is that about right?
I think so, yeah. Okay. So this story takes place in the summer of 2006 in Prince William Sound. If you guys are familiar with that area, it's just a beautiful coastal rainforest. We were on a remote island in Prince William Sound. We were on Knight Island. It's about 3.5 hours by small boat in good weather from Whittier. We were out there for 3.5 months, so we were there for a long time. And because we were there for so long, we had a pretty substantial field camp. We had multiple tent platforms. We had a weather port for cooking and drying our gear. We had a fuel cache, and we installed a really robust mooring for our boat. And the boat that we used while we were out there for day-to-day work was a little 17-foot Boston whaler, and these are just perfectly suited boats for doing field work in the Sound. They're just really reliable. They float really well. And the boat that we had this year was brand new. It was top of the line, right off the assembly line, and we were able to afford this boat because my advisor was particularly good at writing grants, and she wrote a grant specifically for this vessel, and so it represented a significant chunk of our budget for our research. And it was also really important to her sentimentally because it was named after her dearly departed dog, Gaia, who had passed away the year before. So Gaia had spent several field seasons in the Sound with my advisor, and naming the boat after her dog was another way of kind of keeping the dog close, and it was always a reminder that she's still out there with us. So we had about half a dozen people in camp with us at any given time, but there were several of us that were there for the whole field season. So we had my advisor, myself, her dog, and then another graduate student who was studying botany. And for this story, I'm going to call him Murphy. And that's an appropriate name because he was incredibly accident prone. I'm not saying that to be mean or to poke fun at him. He's now an accomplished professional. He has a career. But even he would admit that he was just super accident prone. Anything he got involved in kind of went south in a hurry. So just a couple examples. One day he was entering data in his field notebook. And he was walking along in the forest, and he walked off a 15-foot cliff. that's kind of a big deal because we're a long way from medical attention. So luckily that day he walked away with just a sprained ankle, but it could have been a lot worse. Another day we were on site and he was crashing through some understory, and he was holding these branches back, and they slipped and they whipped back and hit him in the face, and it actually tore his cornea, and it was incredibly painful. He had to be medevaced to Anchorage for that one, and then he had the honor of wearing an eye patch for more than a month. So he recovered from that as well. So he was accident prone, but he tried really hard. And there were a few things in camp that he kind of struggled with, like starting the fuel stove in the cook tent, or gathering fresh water for drinking, or tying up the boats. So when we got to the camp, we had to learn how to tie up the boat to the mooring. And to do this, we would use a bowline knot, and we all had to learn how to tie this knot and demonstrate it, that we could do it proficiently for our advisor before she would let us tie up the boat. And the bowline knot is fantastic if you've never used one before. It's easy to tie, it's easy to untie, even after you've put a lot of tension on it. So it was the knot that we used by rote to tie up our boat. For whatever reason, Murphy just couldn't figure out the bowline. Our advisor taught him, we kind of coached him. You could actually sit with him and guide his hands through the motions, and he could do it, and then you'd step away and say, okay, your turn, and his knot would fall apart. And it was kind of frustrating for him, but it didn't really matter because the rest of us could step in and kind of do it for him, and we knew that he was trying really hard. That was obvious, so it wasn't a big deal. So, this being Alaska, we're used to all kinds of weather, and occasionally we would have weather days, small craft advisories, where we wouldn't be able to go to work. We'd be stuck in camp, we'd just stay in the cook tent all day. But there was one storm in particular that was really memorable, and this was a gale warning. And those are fairly uncommon inside the Sound because it's pretty protected. But we knew that the storm was coming. We'd been listening to the Marine radio, and it was forecast to hit overnight and then continue for a day or so beyond that. And so as we're coming back to camp this day, we knew there's like all this stuff we got to take care of to kind of batten down the hatches for this storm. So we hit the beach and we just scatter. And one person's grabbing gear and storing it under the weather port, and another person's taking stuff off of lines and putting it away safe. And we all just have these chores that we got to get done. But we finish that up, and we kind of relax, go back to the cook tent and have a nice hot meal, and the storm's starting to pick up. And we just, visited in the cook tent, told stories, played cards, ate snack food. We knew we didn't have to go to work the next day because it was going to be a really bad weather day. So we just, we stayed up pretty late, and it was probably 1:30 before we turned in. And as we were heading off to our tents, we checked out, looked at the beach, and squinted into the rain and the waves, and you could see the Gaia was riding high. She was still out there, so that's good. So then we headed up to bed, and I crawled into my sleeping bag, and I was just kind of, settling down for the night. And, listening to the waves crashing on the beach. It's like, is that something hitting the beach? Nah, it's fine. Like, I hope the boat's okay. Who tied up the boat today? It was Murphy. Murphy tied up the boat today. And I don't know how it escaped our collective memory or our collective attention that when we all got back to camp, we had these tasks that we were fixated on accomplishing. And so when he volunteered to tie up the boat, nobody raised a red flag. And so I'm thinking like, oh God, what do I do? Well, it's probably fine because, she was still on the mooring when we went to bed. So she's not going anywhere. So I was like, just try to go to sleep. It's fine. Just sleep. The more I could hear the waves crashing and imagining the sounds of things hitting the beach and imagining the boat getting wrecked. And then, of course, I thought, in the morning, if the Gaia is either gone or wrecked against the beach, I'm not going to be able to look my advisor in the eye and say, I definitely didn't realize that there was a potential huge problem and I did nothing about it. So I begrudgingly realized that the only way I'm going to get any sleep is if I go check that knot. So I haul myself out of bed, and I put on my clammy rain gear and my extra tufts, and I trudge down the trail to the beach, and I grab my PFD along the way. And I get out there, and the guy is still there. It's good. And the tide is also really high, so that's good. That means I don't have to drag the dinghy too far to get to the water. So in order to get out to the Gaia, we would use this little inflatable dinghy. It's like a one-person inner tube with a floor and oarlocks. And you would just use it to ferry yourself from shore to the Gaia. So it took a while for me to launch into the waves and the wind. It was kind of a bear, but I eventually got away from shore and started heading out toward the Gaia. And I got out there, and I crawled over the rail, and I knew I'm only going to be there for like 30 seconds tops because I'm just going to check this knot. So I real quick tied up the dinghy with a half hitch, and I ran to the front of the bow, and I pulled up that bow line, and I fixed my headlamp on that knot, and it's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that knot. It is textbook. I don't know how he did it, but he did. And so I'm kind of incredulous for a minute, like, cool, okay. So I drop the knot, and I turn around just in time to see the line on the dinghy unravel and go, whoop. Like, oh, that's ironic. So now, I mean, this is bad because there goes my ride to shore. And it sounds funny, but it's I don't have a whole lot of options here. I could swim for it, but that'd be really stupid because it's the middle of a gale and it's dark and nobody knows I'm out here. I could wait overnight for somebody to get the dinghy and bring it back to me, or I could try to catch the dinghy with the Gaia. So that's really my only option. And I've got to do it in a very short time period because I've described this beach, but it's not the kind of sandy, soft beach. This is a rocky, bouldery beach. So any boat that gets pushed against this beach is going to be destroyed in short order. So I don't have a whole lot of time to catch the dinghy before it gets back to the beach. It gets into shallow water where I can't follow it. So I run to the center console of the boat, and these whalers are built so that you stand up and steer from the center. And when you turn the ignition switch, it makes this like high-pitched beep. So it starts right up, and I run to the front, and I untie that perfect bowline knot, and then I run back to the console, and I throw it in gear and whip around and start the most intense medium-speed chase you've ever seen, because I don't have a whole lot of freeboard. I know, and the waves are kind of throwing off my mental map of what the shore looks like and how much draft I actually have, but I know it's not much. And so I'm chasing after this dinghy, and I don't want my momentum to carry me beyond where I can actually stop. And I know I'm getting shallow, and I'm anticipating any moment I'm gonna feel the hull ground out. And so I raise the prop about halfway because that's what's in the water the deepest. I don't want to bust the prop, but when I do that, it means I also don't have as much power or maneuverability. So the prop is half raised, and I'm slowly chasing after the dinghy, and I know I'm gonna wreck this boat. And then eventually I somehow catch up to the dinghy, and I just bump it with the nose of the Gaia, and so I run to the front, I grab the line on the dinghy, and I head back to the console. And now, my only option is to back straight up the way that I came in, because if I were to try to do a U-turn, I would be broadside to the waves, and that would immediately push me against the beach. It'd be over in a heartbeat. So my only option is to just back straight up. And so now I'm backing straight into the waves. I don't have as much power from my half-raised prop, and so it's an extremely slow process. And the waves, now that I'm backing straight into them, are coming over the transom and filling the boat with seawater. But it's working. It's working. I eventually get back into deeper water, and I'm able to lower the prop and then turn around and head back out toward the buoy. And I'm tying up, and I realize I probably better spend a little bit of time bilging all this seawater out, because there's probably about a foot of water in the hull of the Gaia now, and that's a lot. But so I'm bilging, and I'm just kind of breathing a sigh of relief and thinking, thank God, nobody got hurt. I didn't destroy our boat, and nobody knows. So I jump back in the dinghy when I finish that chore, and I'm, just thankfully rowing back to shore. And I look over my shoulder, and there's somebody standing on the beach. Like, somebody got up after all. And I can kind of tell from their posture that they are not happy. And so I hit the shore, and it's my advisor. She is displeased. Understandably so. So it turns out that when I started the engine and the ignition went beep, her dog heard that and alerted her that something was wrong. She thought maybe there was a bear in camp, but it turns out her grad student was taking the boat for a joyride in the middle of a gale in the shallow end. So she came out at 2 in the morning in her rain gear to see this entire circus unfold. She had a lot of questions for me. Yeah, and she was upset, and understandably so, because number one, she is the primary investigator on this study. She's responsible for everybody's safety, and I definitely should have told somebody what I was doing. Number two, she is responsible for an incredibly complex budget and logistical plan, and the crux of that plan is this boat. And if this boat is not operational, then we've wasted tons of money and lots of people's time. So if something were to happen, it would have been really bad. So to this day, Murphy doesn't know that I doubted him that much, and I would be really embarrassed if he found out. I learned a few things. The first is obviously, no matter what, always use the appropriate knot for the right situation. And second, maybe don't be so quick to write somebody off when they make a mistake or two, because they just might come back to surprise you, like Murphy did. So that's my story. Thanks for listening.
Kaiti Ott. All right, some more of your memories. I successfully convinced a stranger to duct tape 20 bananas to the windows all over a friend's house out of state. That was you. I can't believe. No, I'm just kidding. We had friends getting married on April 1st on top of Murphy Dome, a small, intimate ceremony. We are usually the late arrivals at any event, so we were surprised to be the first ones up there. We waited and waited. Eventually, we decided we were the butts of a cruel but decidedly funny prank. Just about when we were gathering up to schlep back to town, everyone started to show up. After all. Remember back when a radio host announced Spring Forward had happened that weekend? It was Monday morning, which meant I would be late for work if I didn't bust my butt. I guess we can say that on KUAC. Only on the drive in did I start to wonder why the newsminder did not announce it in the Sunday paper. Oh yeah, April Fools. Spring Forward was next weekend. All right. Many of us have struggled with whether or not Alaska is the place we want to live. It's a wonderful but challenging state to call home. Our next storyteller is another graduate of the first Dark Winter Nights Storytelling Workshop, and she found her answer to that question in a pretty unusual way. So please welcome Brittany Karns with a story we call Fairbanks Yo-Yo.
There we go. That's okay.
Good?
Yeah,
Good? Okay.
I think so. So I'm going to preface by letting you know that I have a long and illustrious career as a storyteller, which is to say that my siblings always called me Story Killer growing up. So I'm just going to put that out there. I actually texted them when I said I got asked to, or offered to come tell a story, and said, "Oh, remember when you guys used to tell me Story Killer?" And they said, "Used to?" ? So, all right. I did what I think a lot of Fairbanks kids do, or a lot of Alaska kids do, or maybe everywhere, but where I left for at least some portion of my schooling, and I lived outside for at least 5 years. And while I was gone, I started to really miss home, and so about the end of my training, I looked at a number of job offers, and I decided to come back. And when I got home, I was so excited to be home. I did all the things that I think we all do. I went dip net fishing, and I went hunting, and I got my first moose, and I bought a new pair of Carhartts, and I was just so excited to be home, and it was just great. And then that thing that happens in usually October came, where all of a sudden all the leaves fell off the trees, but the snow hasn't come yet, and it's super brown out. All of a sudden, it's not that pretty. Winter is coming. My best friend, who'd been a big part of convincing me to move home, told me she was moving, and I just started being like, oh man, I don't know, is this the right choice? Like, I mean, obviously summers here are nice, but like, I don't know. Maybe I should have taken that job offer in Boston or like done the other thing. And I just got really nervous about whether moving home had been the right choice. And about the same time, that same friend said, oh, hey, a bunch of us are going into Tolovana Hot Springs, which we've already talked about tonight, and you should come. And I've never been to Tolovana Hot Springs, and I think obviously that's a common thing for a Fairbanks person to do, and somehow I've never done this. So I'm like, yeah, I should go into Tolovana Hot Springs. So I submitted time off from work request, and the plan is to go in Friday and come out Monday, be there for a good long weekend. And got the time off, I'm getting pretty excited, and then one by one, all the people that I knew who were going on this trip started being unable to go. One's got a master's thesis to finish, and one tore an ACL, and another one's got some other things going on, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, the only person I know going on this trip is this guy, Andy, who's Swiss-German, and we have met several times, and we're friends, but we're on the acquaintance side of friendship more than the close friend side of friendship, I think, at this point. And one other guy named Mark, who's Swiss French, who I've met one time at a bonfire. I do not know anyone else going on this trip. And so I start getting really nervous, but they're like, no. This is gonna be a good trip. You should, the friend who can't go is like, you should still go. They're great guys. It's gonna be a lot of fun. You should go. But I couldn't go until Saturday. They're all going out Friday. And they're like, no, don't worry. We've got a German friend named Lisa, and she really wants to go too. So I find myself as was said, you got to start early to get out there. Bright and early on a Saturday morning in Fox General Store parking lot, meeting this woman, Lisa, who I've never met. Her two huskies hop on the back of my car, and away we go. And she turns out to be just super lovely. She studies all the coolest things you could want to study. She's studying, she's comparing historic dog mushing techniques between Alaskan and Russian techniques. And then she also studies invasive plant species at hot springs. And we just have this glorious drive up. It's a good 90 to 100 miles out to where the gravel trailhead to this thing is, which of course is the windiest place on the planet where you'd ever want to start a trail story or a trail trip. So we hop out and we get all loaded up and we go on this 10 to 11 mile hike into the hot springs. And you can snow machine this, and I know people who do. You can four-wheel it, you can ski it. We hiked it. This group I'm going with, they're not motorized vehicle kind of people when you could be working your own muscles to do something. They're all from the Alps, so obviously. So Lisa and I hike in. It's a good 10-mile arduous hike or so. And by the time, so you go down, across, up forever, and finally we pop out on the top of Tolovana Dome. It's 2,300 feet or so, and I'm just beat, this is November. I forgot to say, story killer. So this is in November, and by about 3 p.m. the sun's going down, and we just have this spectacular sunset. The White Mountains are popping out. You can see way out over Minto Flats, all the little glistening rivers and switchbacks and wildlife, wetland life out there. And so, I don't know, it was just beautiful, but now the sun's going down and we've got to get into camp. So we kind of turn on the hustle, and fortunately the last bit, we are hustling down into camp, and we get in there, and it's dark, but we've just made it. We've got our headlamps on, and the nice thing about this group going out the day before is they've already warmed up the cabin. There's food on the table. The Swiss French one has chopped every possible piece of wood in the entire area. And what we ended up with another Swiss German, a Czech, a couple Americans, I can't remember what else, but as you might imagine, when you get a lot of Swiss people, there are at least 500 loaves of homemade bread on the table. There's 20 blocks of imported cheese. There's charcuterie. There's pate. There's a bajillion bottles of wine. These guys have no problem packing in 1 million pounds of food. So we have just a glorious dinner. We put A1 sauce on everything. No, just kidding. And then what you do at Tolovana Hot Springs, obviously, is you soak and you eat, and then you soak, and then you eat, and then you soak, and then you eat, and then you soak some more. So it's a pretty good lifestyle. By the way, it's a terrible place, and I don't recommend anyone ever going to Tolovana Hot Springs. Don't book when I want to go. But what's pretty nice too is it's pretty secluded. I mean, first of all, you're way the heck out there. There's only 3 cabins. They're separated. If there were people there, we didn't see them. There's 3 hot tubs. The middle one, they're kind of also spread out, so the water's coming down the hill. There's 2 hoses. One's got the like 125 Fahrenheit spring coming in it. One's got just the cold creek, and you basically control the temperature of these tubs just by putting the hoses in or out. And the middle tub, so there's 3. The middle one is like a trough shape, and or a rectangle, and it's my favorite because it's kind of shallow. You definitely couldn't stand in there, but you can sit very comfortably, or even better, you can just kind of put your midsection in and hang your legs out one side and kind of rest your head back on the other side. And we all head out for this late night soak, and it's dark. There's a little bit of moonlight. I think someone's affixed 1 candle out there. And I'm the first one. I hop in, and oh man, this feels so nice. I've been hiking all day. This is great. Everyone else hops in, and all of a sudden, I become very aware I'm the only one wearing a swimsuit. I don't know how it has not occurred to me to question the swimwear policy, or I guess somehow I have done a very minimal amount of non-swimsuited swimming in my life, but I am like really having extreme tachycardia about this. I don't know if anyone else in there even cared. They probably didn't, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh my word, they think I'm such a prude. They think I'm ashamed of my body. They think I think women should be covered at all times. They think that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just sat there for like an hour and agonized about this. And then as it comes time to, get out and head back down, all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, what does this mean for the future of soaking here? I've worn the swimsuit once. Do I wear the swimsuit every time? Is it weird if I stop wearing it? Like, can this thing have a tragic accident? Can it accidentally flow over the side of the hot tub and off into the distance and never be seen again? Like, I don't know what to do with this thing. Oh my word. So at any rate, we head back, we play some games. It's a beautiful evening. The next morning, we get up, we have a breakfast. Someone has brought 5 million pounds of bacon. There is more bacon than I've ever seen in my life. We have a great breakfast. There's a little more soaking. And all of a sudden, everyone starts packing up. And I'm like, oh, hey, I thought we were going out on Monday. It's only Sunday at this point. They're like, oh, yeah, no, I mean, like, we all have work tomorrow, but I think you and Andy are staying. And I'm like, oh, I know Andy, but I don't know Andy. Like, whew, that is a lot of time to spend one-on-one with someone that you kind of know. So sure enough, I kind of watch them off into the distance, and I'm a little nervous. And there's also, I meant to mention, Story Killer, man. There's like a small landing strip out there. So one group of people's got a plane, so we kind of take them out to their bush plane. They take off, and all right, here we go, 24 hours with Andy. But we actually had a very lovely time. We had some good philosophical discussions. We both had good books. We did some good reading, made a lovely dinner. And of course, in the evening, we went back out for a last soak. And again, it's real dark at this point, and it is just quiet. Anyone who might have been there that we didn't even see anyway are long gone. They've all got work tomorrow too. We're the only people out there. And we hop in, and there's not even a whisper of wind. The stars are just shining, and a teeny tiny little bit of an aurora kind of appears on the horizon, but then, it goes away. But then it comes back, and it gets a little brighter, and it fills a little bit bigger corner of the sky. And then it goes away, and then it comes back, and all of a sudden we are treated to just the most brilliant, bright, shining ribbon of an aurora just ribboning across the sky. And I know this isn't scientific, but I swear you can hear this thing. And I just thought, this is why I'm home. This is why I'm here. And it was just peaceful and perfect and beautiful. The next day we hiked out, and it is a fairly long hike, for me at least. I know people who are crazy and biking it out of there in a day, but they're crazy people. So, and Andy is very kind and waits for me because I'm a slow hiker. But somewhere along the way he says, oh, do you want a snack? And I'm like, yeah, and I pull out my measly little Cliff Bar that I am not at all excited about, and I'm kind of nibbling on this thing, and Andy pulls out half a loaf of bread, and then some cheese, and then some beef jerky, and then like a thermos of tea, and then I think like a thermos of soup came out, and then like maybe some whiskey, and he's got some wine, and then some like homemade treats, and like the food just keeps, we had the trail covered and just food that Andy has brought, and like, fortunately he was nice and he shared with me, and we had a really nice picnic. And I didn't eat the rest of the Cliff Bar. So we made it back out, and our car started right up, and so we took off, and fortunately, I think we came home under another aurora, so it was really, really pleasant. It was a really nice trip. This year I got to go in again to Tolovana with 9 of the people in Fairbanks that I care about the most, and it was really, really another spectacular trip with good food and great company and a lot of soaking. And it was a different kind of a trip because I went with people that I know, and it was a lot of fun. But on the other hand, there was something really special about that trip where I went in with people I didn't know at all, and I came out with a lot of pretty awesome friends. This year when I went in, it was again Andy, Swiss German, Mark, the Swiss French. We had a Venezuelan, a Frenchman, an Italian, and a couple other Americans, and we had a really good time. And so I think it just really impressed on me how special it is to live here in a place where we just have amazing people, and it's not always easy to live in the interior or in Alaska. We're far away, it gets cold, it gets dark, but we attract somehow the most amazing people, and I feel really special to be one of them. I'm born and raised here, and I'm really proud of that, but I'm so amazed by who chooses this community. And that doesn't mean that we'll all always stay here, because it's a big world, and there are a lot of places to go. But I'm really grateful to have spent time with them. And I know that if I ever leave, I'm pretty sure I'll do that Fairbanks yo-yo where I'll come back. And just in closing, I heard a quote from a song by Chantal Kresiavuk, and it goes, "Feels like home to me, I'm back where I belong. It feels like home to me, like where I come from." Thank you. Also, I meant to say, this year I did not take the swimsuit. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Also, I was wondering how much it would take for me to get Rob to drive that tank out, but I'm thinking it's an empty threat. We'll see here. Yeah, all right.
Brittany Karns. Okay, some more April Fool's memories. My boyfriend loves his cabin and his landlord, and with good reason. He convinced his landlord to let him put in a wood stove. He built an Arctic entry, a greenhouse. He painted the trim red and the outhouse fireweed pink. It's a good look, I think. For April 1st, I posted all over campus flyers listing an amazing cabin for rent with boyfriend's phone number. He won't admit it, but I know he must have cried. That's awesome. As a new hire bush pilot, I was flying on the back of the clock with a plane full of freight from house cats to cola. I was a co-pilot, and that day flew with the crustiest captain at the place. The other pilots warned me he hated going too fast. It was my leg, and I had the plane all slowed up like grandma in the left lane. I feel eyes staring at me, and of course it is him. He said, "What the blank are you doing?" As he took the throttles from me and shoved them forward, he went to the company frequency and cried, "Who told her I like to go slow?" Several pilots sang out, "April Fools!" My father had just moved to Las Vegas after retiring from the railroad. He had called the previous night, and I was just returning his phone call. He said, "Son, I just won $480,000, and I'm going to pay off your student loan, your credit cards, and your Jeep Patriot." I freaked out for a minute until he said, "April Fools." The following year, I told him I had cancer. Nicely done. That one always goes over well. Alaska can be weird in some ways. You'd think that a commercial pilot, when your coworkers found out you'd once caused a plane crash, that they'd go running for their lives. But our next storyteller discovered that Alaskans can have very different responses to past, shall we say, miscalculations. Please welcome B.J. Bennedsen with a story we call Second Chances.
I think I know that pilot who was just mentioned. So, in 1992, I was a newly minted aircraft mechanic, and I was going to Alaska. I got a job as a general kind of fix-it guy at this little fish processing plant just down the coast from Yakutat, a place called Dry Bay. So I went out to Seattle to meet up with my new boss and eventually lifelong friend, Pat. And like it's just the most normal thing in the world, him and I, my little red toolbox, we pile into his single-engine Piper Pacer wheelplane and we go up the coast. I remember sitting there looking at that rugged British Columbia coastline thinking, this is really cool. I really like the way people do things here. And I don't know how many of you transplants remember your first summer, but mine was just fantastic. It was just, every day was an adventure. It didn't matter if you didn't know how to drive a forklift or run a 1952 surplus Army boom truck. Somebody showed you how to do it, and you were on your way. Nobody cared if I'd never seen an industrial refrigeration system with a 10-ton ammonia compressor or a Korean War vintage generator set or the inside of a washing machine. It's like, well, you're a mechanic, right? Just figure it out. Just do it. Just make it happen. Just make it go. We don't care how you do it. And some of you may take that for granted, but I tell you what, to a recent European transplant from a small, somewhat stifling Scandinavian country, this was incredibly liberating. So sometime during this period, I managed to acquire an airplane. And that was when, a young guy in his early 20s who was a little bit handy could actually buy a beat up little plane that needed some work for maybe what you'd pay for a used car, a good used car. And I really had the best intentions of getting my pilot's license and completing my flight training by the end of the season. I had hooked up with this bush pilot flight instructor guy in Yakutat, but it just didn't work out. September rolls around, we're packing up camp, and I still don't have a pilot's license. But I was pretty handy with the airplane by then. And I decided, you know what, I have friends, classmates from A&P school in Fairbanks. I'll just fly the plane up there, and I'll get organized. So, late September, I nailed the last piece of plywood to the last window, and I'm the last guy out of camp. And I fly to Cordova. The weather in Cordova was not exactly great. Specifically, I couldn't make it up the Copper River Valley into the interior. So I had to sit it out. And partly because I was cheap, and partly because I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself in my licenseless state, I didn't camp at the municipal airport, which is right downtown and within easy walking distance of things that make it more pleasant to sit out the weather, like bookshops and coffee stores and showers, stuff like that. Instead, I camped at the Jet Airport, and as you know, that's 11 miles out of town. And a Cessna 150 is not designed for sleeping in. But it can be done. Take out the one seat, and I could lie down with my feet under the instrument panel and my head is back in the fuselage, and it actually wasn't too bad. But after a few days of this, I'm really low on food, and I'm out of books to read, and I'm really, really tired of this action in the rain. So as soon as the weather clears a little bit, I'm out of there. And I make it to Golcana without incident. And the weather on the other side of the mountains there was just fantastic. Beautiful Indian summer day, clear blue skies, unlimited visibility, sunshine. Yes, I'm gonna be in Fairbanks tonight. So I gas up the plane and I go to get a weather briefing. And the weather office was this little Atco trailer thing. It had no windows. I swear it was 90 degrees in there. And it's being manned by this guy in bike shorts and a really tight t-shirt, and he's chain smoking cigarettes. So I'm having a very hard time focusing on the briefing because for one thing, I'm trying to not breathe. And he's also telling me stuff I don't want to hear. Winter storm warning, Isabel Pass closed, heavy snow at times, visual flight not recommended. So I go back outside, and I look at my airplane that I don't want to spend another night in. And I look at that clear blue sky, and I say, well, okay, Mr. Bike Pants, but I'm going. So by the time I make it maybe 2/3 of the way across the Denali Highway, I see the first few flurries. And by the time I get to the parks and I turn north, it's really kind of snowing. And by the time I get kind of not too far south of Windy Pass, where the mountains really start to close in, I'm maybe at 300 feet, I can see a quarter mile, and the mountains are completely obscured on both sides. And I realized that, man, this is the sort of thing you've been reading about in accident reports. The pilot continued visual flight into instrument conditions without being equipped or trained to do so. And you know what happens is you get in the cloud and you don't know what's left or right or up or down, you just lose control and you crash. Or alternatively, you just get forced lower and lower and you lose your way and you turn up into the wrong canyon. And by the time you realize it, you can't get back out of there. And either way, the result is oftentimes fatal. So I decide to turn around, but it's socked in behind me. So I'm kind of trapped. So I'm starting to get a wee bit concerned by now. And I decide that I just have to land and sit out this storm. And I kind of have to do something right now because I admit I was having a little bit of a tough time keeping together by now. There was actually an airstrip right below me, but it had snow on it, and I didn't know how much snow, and I was worried that here I am, my little nose-wheel airplane with a little 6-inch tires, and I'll dig in and nose over and wreck the plane. Then there was a Parks Highway, but it had a fair amount of traffic on it, and I couldn't quite figure out how to land and get off the road, and I just couldn't get that one through my head. Then I see this little gravel road. The Parks is going north and it curves off to the left, and this little gravel road keeps going straight. And it's been plowed. And it's kind of short, and it's kind of narrow, and there's snow berms on either side, and there's trees. But it's adequate, it'll do. Also, at the approach end between the Parks Highway and the little gravel road, there's a big, like an 8-foot ditch. And right off to the left, there's a big stack of construction material, like railroad ties or something, 5-6 foot stack. Okay, I'm going for it. So I fly my little 250-foot pattern, and I line up with this road. I'm kind of low, and I'm kind of slow, because I was really concerned with overshooting and crashing into the trees on the other end. As a matter of fact, I'm what you would call behind the power curve. And what that means in a nutshell is, at this point in time, it doesn't matter how much gas I add. I will hit the ground. The only question is whether I make that road or I go in the ditch instead. The airplane was also equipped with what you call a stall horn. And that's a little doodad that warns you when you get real close to the airspeed below which you can no longer sustain flight. And the airplane literally stops flying and drops. And actually, when you land a small airplane, you actually want that to happen in your final landing flare when you touch down and settle gently onto the ground, but you want it to happen 2 inches above the ground. You don't want it to happen 50 feet in the air. So I come around, I'm lined up. The stall horn is going beep, 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 beep. I'm hanging on the prop. I got the stick all the way back in my lap. I am flaring. This is it. The ditch is still coming up. Out of the corner of my eye, I see my wingtip just clear that stack of railroad ties, and I touch down. And that is probably the only piece of airmanship in this whole sorry tale I'm just a little bit proud of. I did not waste any of that landing area. Unfortunately, I didn't do so good on the rollout. Somehow I caught a gear leg on the snow berm, and next thing I know, I'm hanging on the seatbelt, My face is an inch from the instrument panel. The props wrapped around the cowling, the nose gears tore out, tails up in the air. And that's when I realized I'm not just going to sit this out and fly out of here later. So I undo my seatbelt and I sort of spill out on the ground, and I was pretty shook up by now. So I go out to the road, I flag somebody down, very nice lady. He takes me to a house. I make a few phone calls. Between this and that, it's maybe an hour and a half before I get back to the plane. And when I got back there, it looked like somebody had poured buckets of blue Kool-Aid in the snow around that plane. It was the avgas that had been leaking out of that carburetor, the plane sitting on its nose. I hadn't done anything to secure the plane. So, oh my goodness, I run over, I turn off the fuel, I turn off the switch, and I think, gee, I wonder if my emergency locator beacon that's designed to transmit an impact has been sending out a distress signal for the last hour and a half. So I quickly switched to the emergency frequency, 121.5, beep, 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 and as soon as I turn off my beacon, that stops. But. The weather is really, really bad. I mean, surely nobody's out looking for me. I should still have time to make this look like it's not an accident. Then I see this Suburban come down the Parks Highway, and it's going really slow. And then it gets to where you can just barely see the tail of my plane above the willows, and it stops. And then it comes around and comes in this little road I crashed on, and out steps a guy in a park ranger uniform. And he was actually very nice. He was very excited. Oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay. We're out looking for you. We had to land. The weather got so bad. We took the truck. It was our last chance to find you, and you're here and you're not hurt. We're so glad. And I really don't want to appear ungrateful. And I fully understand that these two guys, they put their lives on the line to look for this idiot. But right then and there, I really wasn't too excited to see the authorities. So now the cat's out of the bag. And I had to go to Fairbanks and confess my sins to the FAA. And they actually thought it was pretty funny. And they were very merciful. And all they did was suspend the license I didn't have for 90 days. And that is more or less the end of the story of the plane crash. But there's an epilogue to this story. So a few years later, I get my first professional pilot job. And I was working for this company that operated these big old World War II cargo airplanes. And the way you learn to do that was sort of the old-fashioned way. You know, you get hired with a minimum of training and experience, and then they put you in the co-pilot seat with a grizzled old experienced captain, and he tries to teach you the ropes without hurting anybody. So by definition, when you're a new co-pilot, you're kind of a dangerous idiot. But you know, I got along good with those guys. And I must have shown some aptitude because they were good to me. They taught me a lot of stuff. And after the first 5 weeks or so, we're taking a plane back to Fairbanks for maintenance. And we're going up the Parks Highway. And I realized that we're coming up on the crash site. So I'm sitting there looking out the window. And the captain kind of looks over at me and takes a puff on his Marlboro and, "What are you looking at, kid?" It's like, right down there, right there is where I crashed my Cessna. "You crashed your 150? And then he had to have the whole story. And he thought it was great. Ha, ha, ha. Good for you, son. But no sooner had we landed in Fairbanks, and I don't even think I had the chocks under the wheels yet, and he's told this story to all of upper management in this company where I'm a new hire. My new co-pilot, he was flying without a license. He wrecked his plane. He thumbed his nose at the FAA. He's a good guy. He's one of us. And somehow, I don't think that if you're a new hire at, I don't know, United Airlines, and something like that comes out of your murky past, that it results in instant status. But that's what happened. And I think that's what my story is really all about. So while we live in a place where the country is somewhat harsh and unforgiving of stupid mistakes, the people are not. People will give you second chances 10 times over as long as you keep trying. And something that out there in the real world would be this black mark on your resume, you know what? Here it's just a good story. Or perhaps it even works to your advantage. And that's the kind of place we live in. Thanks for listening.
BJ Bennedsen. Thanks so much for coming to Dark Winter Nights, True Stories from Alaska. The goal of our program is to share true stories from Alaska with the world, and your support tonight helps us to do that. This is going to be our last live show for a while. While I haven't been replaced by a robot, I am actually going away on sabbatical next year. So we're not sure how many live events we'll have in the future, just because it's really hard to do the show without me, because I'm the best RC tank driver that any of them know, so difficult to replace. But in the meantime, you can download our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, listen to it on our website. You can follow us on Facebook. In fact, I think we have a picture of BJ's airplane that I'm going to post this week. You can also join the Dark Winter Nights mailing list and keep up to date on future events. Remember that we always need your stories, so fill out the form on the program, or you can submit them right at darkwinternights.com. We're always looking for volunteers, so you can also check that form on the back of the program. And tell your friends about us. Let them know that reality TV is not the only place they can get their Alaska fix, right? Perfect. Anyone, anywhere can listen to our radio program online. Also, it'd be a big favor for us if you could fill out the survey that some of you may have gotten in your programs. The thing I'm most proud of with Dark Winter Nights is the team of professionals and organizations we've been able to convince to help us make tonight happen. In particular, I'd like to thank the UAF College of Liberal Arts Journalism Department, my employer, Geek City Electronics as well. Thanks to them. And thanks to all of you for going there and thanking them, because they've been very happy with us, and it looks like we might be able to bring them on as a sponsor again. Our executive producers are Colleen Wood, Ryan Peterson, Amanda Huff, Elena Suddeth, and Naomi Horn. Lights, sound, and projection by Alaska Universal Productions and John Huff. Video recording by Dave Sell and his team. Thanks to Sarah Smith and Frank's Menswear for providing my clothing for the evening and every Dark Winter Night since November 2014. What do you think of pink shirt? Sing? Don't tempt me. I really could do that. I'd like to thank everybody at KUAC. They air our radio program and TV specials in prime time, and they're airing us live right now. In particular, I'd like to thank Lori Neufeld and Keith Martin. Our band from the very start has always been Thought Trade, Travis Burrows, Danny Opgendorf, Patrick Mayu, Casey Smith, and the lovely and talented Emily Anderson. I'd like to thank my daughter for loaning me her robot Christmas present for the start of the show. I'd also like to thank my wife. She's helped me chase my dreams for 13 years now, and I feel like they're the luckiest 13 years of my life. And finally, our storytellers are Josh Weiser, Zoey Grenier, Eric Stevens, Mike Hopper, Kaiti Ott, Brittany Karns, BJ Bennedsen, and Amanda Byrd, who are proving that Alaskans have the best stories. Remember, these are the stories we tell up here in Alaska on Dark Winter Nights. Good night.